All right, to Fox 5 Live today. Yeah, we are here in the digital newsroom. I'm Molly Nevola here with intern Emily and Ben. Say hey, what's up? So welcome to our show, guys. We are going to be going around with all the live and breaking news for you guys across the nation, here in DC as well. And our first thing on the agenda is going down to Mississippi. You guys probably heard about this. The plane that went down in LeFlore County, Mississippi, killing 15 Marines and 1 Navy sailor. Police are going to update us on that very shortly. We're waiting on that live right down there. I see the podium, I see the stand. We're going there in a bit. Also on Capitol Hill today, Christopher Wray is going through some confirmation hearings to be the next FBI director. He's President Trump's pick to fill the shoes of James Comey, who obviously we saw leave that post in the past few months. That was a big sort of shocker. We saw that whole thing go down.
I think Trump announced it the day before Comey was testifying.
I think you're right. That's right. It was like sort of it was almost like, yeah, it was like very, exactly. There was a lot of sort of heat with that decision. And then we saw Comey testify. Now, Christopher Wray is on the stand, so we'll hear from him up on Capitol Hill live as well. We have that coming in. I'm going to flash you down to Mississippi. This is what we're looking at for this presser to update us on that plane crash. Really, really sad story. FBI now investigating that. It was a U.S. military plane that spiraled out of control into a soybean field in Mississippi. More details we're going to hear from officials soon. But first, we'll bring back into the newsroom, guys. We want to connect with you guys, our viewers. So thanks so much for watching. Let us know where you're watching from and what you think of the show. And if you have anything you want to talk about, feel free to chat with us as well in the YouTube box right there in that live chat. And we're here every day, guys. Weekdays, 11 a.m. into the afternoon for your live and breaking news on your lunch break, for your midday, whatever it is. So again, intern Emily, intern Ben, in the back, Ben in the back. We're excited to be with you guys today. Let's flash it over now so you can get a taste of sort of what's going on Capitol Hill for this confirmation hearing today as Christopher Wray testifies to be the next FBI director. Let's take a look.
Report carried different evidentiary value and weight in a courtroom. Is that not true?
That's absolutely true.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you're saying is under some circumstances, conversations with the President of the United States you feel should be memorialized in a contemporaneous written report.
Certainly there would be situations where it would be appropriate for me to memorialize the conversation, just like there would be with other people if they were important conversations. I thought it made sense.
I'm not going to let you off that easy.
Okay.
Of course, that is your responsibility as director. But we're dealing with an extraordinary situation here, where a man you respected was fired, called a nut job, and the president said to Russian visitors, we're putting an end to this investigation. This is not an ordinary course of business for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is the highest elected official in the United States of America trying to stop an investigation by putting Jim Comey out of business. I think it's a little different than the routine requirements of the office. Do you?
Well, certainly I would distinguish, Senator, if this is what you're driving at, between a sort of routine conversation and a very significant, important conversation. And ones that fall in the latter category, I would think it would behoove me to make sure there's an appropriate record of that.
We've talked a lot about Russia in this hearing and the threat to the United States. You've read the unclassified version of their attempt to have a cyber attack on the United States election campaign. Now we have a statement from the President of the United States suggesting, quote, Putin and I discussed forming an impenetrable cybersecurity unit so that election hacking and many other negative things will be guarded and safe. So now we've all started with the premise that Russia was involved in trying to change our election. We all understand that Russia has been a bad actor around the world in many places. And now we have the president saying, we're going to get together with them on the issue of cybersecurity. So if it is proposed to you by the administration to create this cybersecurity unit and to share information with the Russians about the United States capabilities and vulnerabilities when it comes to cybersecurity, what is your reaction?
Well, my reaction, Senator, is that I need to learn a lot more about the current state of our cybersecurity defenses and our threats in talking to the career intelligence community professionals to be able to evaluate that responsibly. But I wouldn't want to do anything that, if I got that kind of advice and input, suggested was putting us at greater risk as opposed to greater protection.
I would think there would be red flags flying in every direction. I guess that's a bad analogy with Russia. But I think there should be a cautionary feeling about any suggestion that we give to them information about our cyber capabilities and security. Wouldn't that be your first reaction?
Well, Senator, my reaction is that any threat, any effort to interfere with our election systems is one, whether it's from a state actor like Russia or from a non-state actor, something that needs to be taken very seriously. And I would think that it would be wise for all of us to proceed with great caution in the wake of that information.
I think I'd go further, but I'll leave that question. You and I had a good conversation yesterday about President George W. Bush's reaction after 9/11 when it came to the Muslim American population of the United States. I would appreciate it if you would recount your impression of the president's conduct after 9/11 when it came to this topic, and your own personal feelings about the patriotism of Muslim Americans and the role they play in keeping America safe.
Thank you, Senator. It is something that we talked about yesterday. And first off,
all right, guys, we're actually going to jump down now to Mississippi, LeFlore County, Mississippi, where we're getting an update on this plane that corkscrewed into the soybean field on Monday. I think I misspoke earlier when I said it was on Tuesday, but it looks like this is coming up shortly. We're going to hear from them now. Let's go down to Mississippi.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Major Andrew Aranda. I'm a public affairs officer for Marine Forces Reserve. Right now, Brigadier General Bradley S. James, the commanding general of 4th Marine Aircraft Wing, is going to give a statement. Afterwards, the Commissioner of Public Safety for Mississippi, Marshall L. Fisher, will also provide a statement. The scope of this brief is to provide an update on the recovery and investigation of Yankee 72 that crashed here recently. We are withholding the names of the service members until 24 hours after the next of kin notification. We do not have any time to answer questions. And without further ado, General James.
All right, good morning. 2 days ago, July 10th, 2017, the United States Marine Corps lost a KC-130T Tango model from BMGR 452 based at Stewart Air National Guard Base, Newburgh, New York. BMGR 452 is within the command structure of Marine Air Group 49 and ultimately under me at 4th Marine Air Wing. The mission of the flight, Yankee 72 flight, was that of airlift of a team from Marine Corps Special Operations Command 2nd Raider Battalion based out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. The route of the flight was planned from Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, North Carolina to Naval Air Facility El Centro, California, and then to Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, Arizona. At approximately 1600, 4 p.m. Central Time, air traffic control lost radar contact. Shortly thereafter, large plumes of smoke were discovered in the Itta Bena, Mississippi area. More specifically, two large impact areas are half a mile north of Highway 82 and a half mile south of Highway 82. Indications are something went wrong at cruise altitude. There is a large debris pattern. On board were 16 great Americans representing the United States Marine Corps and the United States Navy. 9 of the Marines are from BMGR 452, Newburgh, New York. 6 Marines from 2nd Raider Battalion, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and 1 Navy hospital corpsman with the 2nd Raider Battalion, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Family members have been notified. Out of respect for the families, we will not release the names or specifics as of now. Expect the roster of names within the next few days. The members involved in response to the Yankee 7-2 mishap is extensive in agencies and skill sets. We are working through the process in a four-phased approach. Number 1, recovery of remains and effects, notification of next of kin. Number 2, preservation of the impact sites and equipment. Number 3, investigation. Number 4 will be the cleanup and the restoration of the impact sites. This tragic mishap has brought together many wonderful people from federal, state, and local agencies. I want to identify those agencies. They are in no particular order. The Mississippi Wildlife and Fisheries, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, the Mississippi Highway Patrol, the FBI, ATF, U.S. Army EOD, U.S. Air Force EOD, the Mississippi Office of Homeland Security, the sheriff offices from LeFlore and Sunflower counties, the LeFlore County Fire Department, the LeFlore Coroner's Department, the LeFlore Emergency Management Agency, the Salvation Army, the Mississippi Valley State University, the Mississippi State Examiner's Office, the U.S. Armed Forces Medical Examiners Team out of Dover, the U.S. Air Force Safety Team out of Columbus Air Force Base, the DeSoto County Sheriff's Department, the Delta K-9 Team, and the United States Marines from 4th Marine Air Wing and the 2nd Raider Battalion. I also want to thank the rock-solid people of the local area and your assistance in anything that you have been able to provide us. You make the state of Mississippi great. Now I want to pass the stage to Marshall Fisher. He is the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety for the state of Mississippi.
Thank you, General. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. What happened Monday is a grim reminder of the sacrifice of the sailors, Marines, airmen that serve our great country. And even though they weren't in a combat situation, it's a loss to families, and out of respect for those families, we appreciate the prayers and support of the people of the great state of Mississippi. It is not a surprise to me to learn of the support of the Marine Corps from the people in LeFlore County and from the people of this state. It is not uncommon for Mississippians to be up front at times like this. So thank you for your prayers and your support. The site crash area has been secured by elements of the Department of Public Safety, Department of Wildlife, and numerous other law enforcement agencies. As you know, an undertaking like this is there's not just one agency. It's a team effort. We have a pretty large area to cover. There are items that are going to be recovered by teams on the ground. Some of these may be unsafe. So members of the public, if you happen upon any of these items, I'm going to give you a number to call here in just a minute. And it's very important to note that none of this stuff should be touched. Removal of anything from any of these areas could be subject to criminal prosecution. Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau, federal agency, has a lead on that. We've been in contact with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District Acting U.S. Attorney Chad Lamar. So I want to state again, any items removed from this area, persons removing those items could be subject to criminal prosecution. If you come upon anything, we'll give you a number to call, 1-800-ATF-GUNS, 1-800-ATF-GUNS. There are ordnance disposal teams in the area. There is a possibility that the ordnance teams may be disposing of some devices to render them safe. If the public hears an explosion, small explosion in that regard, there should be no need for alarm. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Could you describe what the public should look for?
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the brief. In closing, I would just like to introduce Captain Andy Cressman. He's going to be replacing me as the PAO Public Affairs Officer on site. Thank you for coming out.
All right, guys, so that concludes the press conference there. Police updating, Marines or military updating there on what happened. 16 dead in that plane crash on Monday night. But as you heard, they're not revealing the names yet because they're looking for the next of kin still from some of those military members. So really a sad case all around. If you've been watching this, at least you can sort of follow with a little more information here from this press conference down in LeFlore County, Mississippi. But we're going to bring it back up. Let's go back up into the newsroom here, guys. If you're just joining us, I'm here, Molly Nevola, here with intern Emily and intern Ben behind me. And we're just rocking it out in the digital newsroom here today, guys. We're going to see what's going on, including this little piece of tidbit news. Did you guys hear about this? Check it out. This is an actual picture of it, but a little picture of Antarctica to sort of set the stage. A big iceberg, twice the volume of Lake Erie, has broken off a key floating ice shelf in Antarctica. They're saying it's 1 trillion tons.
About the size of Vermont, I think.
Yes, about the size of Vermont. And I guess you could do the comparison also, twice the volume of Lake Erie. Kind of hard to think or picture that, except for like we know maps. But I honestly saw this headline because I saw people talking about how they might need to rewrite some maps and sort of structure the graphical maps of Antarctica because of this. Now again, not an exact picture of it. Of course, we don't have drone footage or like aerial footage of this, but it would be cool to see if we do end up getting something to use to talk about this large iceberg that has broken off a shelf in Antarctica. And it just makes you think, like, you never really think about that continent and the maps and like drawing all that and just like what that really means. What does that mean for global warming? What does that mean for everything else? Like, it's just, it'll have some implications for sure. So I thought that was quite interesting. That was sort of some new trending news that was breaking today. Coming back in, I'll give you a live look at the Capitol Dome today, guys. This is what it looks like in D.C. Hot and hazy. Yeah, nice day, but gorgeous. But it is a hot one. We know it's in the 90s. Yeah, the wind is blowing a little bit, thank goodness, because it's in the 90s. It's going to be pushing 100 today. I heard even 99, 100 tomorrow. So
yeah, I heard that tomorrow.
Yes, stay hydrated. And Ben, you're going out today to Redskins Stadium, right? Do you want to talk to us about that?
Well,
pass the mic over.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be a bunch of businesses coming out to, I guess, give samples of their food, and we're going to be out there. I don't know if it's going to be outside or indoors. Hopefully it's indoors because I know if we're on turf, just being a former athlete or not, from being a former athlete that, is 10 degrees higher than what it actually is. So hopefully all this is happening like indoors inside of FedEx.
Yeah. So Ben is going to be attending this event at FedEx Field, Redskins Field, which is actually the largest, I think, by mass NFL stadium in the nation.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I remember climbing it. I don't know if any of you guys have been there, but I remember going to a couple games there.
Yeah, I've sat at the nosebleeds. And
wow. I think I have too. Yeah.
I don't know. It's not a bad view. Like, you see everything, but when it gets cold, it gets cold. Like, the wind is nonstop.
And when it gets hot, like today, it's gonna be hot.
Yeah, so
he's doing a
be hydrated, everyone.
Be hydrated. He's doing a food event there with Brody Logan, our sports reporter, going out there to the field. It's turf, right? It is turf.
It's like kind of like artificial. It's artificial grass, but it's a little mixture of both.
It's a mixture. So he's going out there later today. But yeah, again, just to circle all that back with the weather, it's super hot today. Going to be pushing into the upper 90s for sure. Wish I had a weather guy on hand to come in and chat with us, but next time we will. So if you guys are in the DC area, that's what's going on for weather, but we're going to come back now to Capitol Hill. We're still watching President Trump's pick for FBI Director Christopher Wray. He's testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee, which we've seen a lot of this year. So we're going to go check that out. We have a double shot for you for the question and answer. So let's dip in there, and then we'll come back into the newsroom in a little bit.
Continue once you're confirmed.
I look forward to it.
Senator Whitehouse. Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Wray. I'm delighted that you are here, and I wish you well. I would like to ask as a question for the record that you provide the committee with a complete description of what you know about how it is that you came to be selected. If you could lay that out. We had a similar question and answer from Judge Gorsuch, and I think in this case it would be helpful. But let me ask you a specific question to that here, which is during the course of coming to this table today and being nominated, you mentioned that you will owe your duty of loyalty only to the Constitution and the rule of law. Has anybody asked you otherwise?
No, Senator. No one has asked me for any loyalty oath, and I wouldn't offer one. As I said, my loyalty is to the Constitution, the rule of law, and the mission of the FBI.
You've kind of answered the question, when should the FBI director unilaterally take over the role of Attorney General of the United States? And I read your answer to be never. But let's say you're presented with a situation in which you don't have confidence in the Attorney General in a particular matter because of a conflict of interest, because of perception issues, for whatever reason it is that you have lost confidence in the Attorney General on that matter. What then, if you're not going to just unilaterally take over the role of Attorney General and hold your own press conferences and make your own announcements as if you were the Attorney General, what would Plan B be? Who do you go to? Do you go to the Attorney General anyway, even though you've lost confidence? Do you go to the DAG and say, I have a problem, and try to work something out? What would be the proper way to face that problem in the Department of Justice?
Well, Senator, as you know from your own time as U.S. Attorney, I think the Deputy Attorney General is the proper place to go under that scenario.
Good answer. I agree with you. And I gather your answer to when should the FBI disclose derogatory investigative information about an uncharged subject is also never. But you went on to say that the protocol against disclosing derogatory information is there for a reason. Could you state the reason?
The reason, Senator, is that if the department has negative information to share about somebody, then the proper way for it to manifest that is through charges, because then the person who's accused has an opportunity to defend themselves against those charges, and it will be resolved by a jury or a judge if it's a bench trial. So there's a place for the accused to vindicate or fail to vindicate the charges against them. With uncharged conduct, it's the old saying, where do I go to get my reputation back?
And it is a corollary of the rule that the FBI does not disclose derogatory investigative information about an uncharged subject, that even when a subject has been charged, you limit yourself to the conduct that is charged in the indictment or information, in the charging documents, or in subsequent court filings, correct?
Right, exactly. The prosecutors try to stay within the four corners of the charging documents and the public record.
Even when you have a charged subject, it's still not open season with derogatory investigative information.
If we have derogatory information to share, it should be manifested in a charging document of some sort.
Correct. Great. Thank you. I may be going over replowed ground, but I really want to make sure that I get this right. There was in my view, infamous U-by-B 2002 torture memo that gave the department's approval to waterboarding. That memo omitted a number of things. It omitted a Fifth Circuit decision upholding a conviction by the Department of Justice of a Texas sheriff for waterboarding criminal suspects. Pretty big thing to overlook in a legal memo, in my opinion. It overlooked the court-martial of U.S. soldiers in the Philippines for waterboarding Filipinos. Again, a little bit out of the direct lane of criminal prosecution, but you'd think that an Office of Legal Counsel would be able to figure that out and know that the United States had this history. And third, it overlooked the military tribunals that prosecuted Japanese soldiers for the war crime of waterboarding U.S. prisoners. So to me, that memo was a horrifying low point in the legal scholarship of the Department of Justice. Your name came up in testimony in Congress with respect to a 2003 memo. Could you just let me know what role you had in signing off on any of the OLC torture memos and what you knew about them? I know a lot of people were cut out of them. That's part of the problem with the process. What was your role with respect to the memos out of OLC on waterboarding?
So, Senator, I have no recollection, and as I said to Senator Feinstein, I'm pretty sure I would recall, of ever reviewing, much less providing input on, comments on, blessing, approving, anything of that sort, any memo from John Yoo on this topic. Later, in 2004, when I was Assistant Attorney General, the Criminal Division did have a fairly surgical role, which was not, underline the word not, in approving any particular interrogation technique, but merely commenting on a public general interpretation memo by Dan Levin about what the statutory standard means. And that opinion, as you know, I was rescinding prior interpretations that had occurred that, again, I had not seen. I did not think it was appropriate for the Criminal Division to be playing any role in weighing in on particular interrogation techniques, because I think the Criminal Division's role is, and we showed it through investigations we brought, to be investigating and prosecuting cases where people go too far in interrogation, not to be providing legal advice.
Like United States versus Lee, which is the case out of the Fifth Circuit where a Texas sheriff was convicted of federal crimes for doing exactly that. All right, well, I'll follow up for the record with what your assessment is of why, John, you mentioned your name, but there's no point. I've got 2 minutes left, and I'd like to get on a couple of other things. There was a famous confrontation between the Department of Justice and the Bush White House over the warrantless wiretapping program back in 2004. Acting Attorney General Comey and Director Mueller both had prominent roles in that. You were in the department at the time. There was a group of people who indicated that they, if it was necessary to do resignations, that they would be a part of the group that would resign if the department's views were not met by the White House. Were you in that group, and do you have any recollections of exactly what took place, any episode in which you made that clear?
Yes, I was one of the people who said he would resign. I was not read into the program at the time, so my recollection is that I had a conversation with then Acting Attorney General Comey, who shared with me not the classified contents of the program, but that there was an ongoing dispute about a particular program that was constitutional and legal in nature. And he explained to me some of the people who were read into the program, who all felt the same way he did, and their willingness to resign. And knowing those people, and having worked side by side with those people, and knowing that these were hardly shrinking violets in the war on terror, there was no hesitation in my mind as to where I stood, and I stood with them. And I said, I want you to let me know if you guys get to the point where you think you have to resign, because I'll resign with you.
Last question. Congress has oversight responsibility over the FBI. Congress also has an obligation to butt out of FBI criminal investigations for very good reason. Yet in our oversight responsibility, it's important to make sure that cases aren't being tanked for whatever reason. And so I'm interested in what you think the appropriate questions are for members of Congress to ask about an investigation. For instance, is it appropriate to ask if agents were ever assigned to a matter? And if so, how many, without getting into the details? Is it appropriate to ask if any investigative work was done, if there were any subpoenas, any documents obtained, any interviews done? Is it appropriate to consider whether the department's process for following a particular matter, like a matter involving a public official, for instance, has special base touching that has to happen at various places, whether that actually took place? Is it legitimate for Congress to look at the process of a criminal investigation without going into the substantive evidence to assure itself that a good job has in fact been done, that an adequate job has in fact been done, as in the case of the Lerner investigation, where quite a lot was disclosed about what had in fact been done?
Well, Senator, I do think that the committee has a very important oversight role that needs to be respected. Obviously, investigations need to be ensured that they're not jeopardized, information doesn't compromise those. I think in my experience, there are usually ways to work through some of those issues. The particular examples that you gave, I'd have to think through each one.
Well, let's make that a question for the record because my time has expired. I appreciate your time here and I wish you well, as I said.
Thank you, Senator.
Chairman.
Senator Sayers.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Wray, and thank you to your family. Thank you for your willingness to serve again. Sir, there's a crisis of public trust in this country. Obviously, this institution has about a 12% approval rating. Over the last 4 decades, we've gone from a net average of about 50% public support for most of our institutions to about 30. If you're confirmed, you'll have an important responsibility to help rebuild public trust in the Bureau. I want to ask you a series of questions about that. But to begin with, why do you think the FBI director has a 10-year term?
I think the FBI director has a 10-year term because there is a judgment made that the role of the FBI and the role of the FBI director needs to be one that is independent of partisan politics. In other words, 10-year term specifically contemplates that there could and almost inevitably would be changes in administration during the course of the tenure. And unlike other presidential appointees, the theory is, I think rightly, that the FBI has both a criminal law enforcement and an intelligence role that sort of transcends political policy positions and needs to be kind of kept apart and above from that and to endure through changes in administration.
So what kinds of conditions would it make sense for an FBI director to be fired under?
Well, if an FBI director engaged in misconduct, certainly that would be a situation. The FBI directors, nobody is above the rule of law, and an FBI director who doesn't comply with the law should be treated just like anybody else.
And when you unpack this concept of independence, because it's critically important that the Bureau and its law enforcement functions and its investigative functions not be politicized, and yet we have 3 branches of government. So ultimately, the legislative and the executive branches, the 2 that are most relevant at this moment, are accountable to the people. So there is a boss of the FBI director, but it's not supposed to be direct political accountability. How do you conceive of, if you're confirmed, who your boss is when you're the FBI director?
Senator, it's the right question, of course. It is true that the president is the head of the executive branch and the attorney general is the head of the Justice Department, and the FBI is both part of the Justice Department and part of the executive branch. I think the independence, when we talk about independence of the FBI, what we're really talking about is not structural or organizational independence, but independence of process. To me, the FBI needs to be able to follow the facts and follow the law wherever and to whomever they lead. It's a process question about how they go about investigating. That would be my commitment if I was FBI director, and that's a different kind of independence than an org chart kind of independence.
So could you state again, you've said it here, it's obvious from your time in the Justice Department in the mid-2000s, and you've said here today that you can imagine circumstances where you would resign. I think it's critically important. When this hearing started and you stood there and you put up your right hand and all the camera clicks went on, people know that oaths matter. And when you're taking an oath, you're saying ultimately that it's the Constitution that you serve and that the legislature passes laws, the executive branch executes them, but the Bureau's role in the execution of those laws is not to be a politicized or political function. I think the American people need to hear you clearly define the circumstances under which you would resign. Can you help us understand, when you're restoring public trust in the Bureau, how do you understand if somebody is trying to politicize the work and the decisions that you're supposed to make as director of the Bureau?
Well, first, Senator, I would say that former Attorney General Griffin Bell, whose name has come up several times already today, one of the first things he taught all of us about public service positions, especially one like this, is that you can't do a job like this without being prepared to either quit or be fired at a moment's notice if you're asked to do something or confronted with something that is either illegal, unconstitutional, or even morally repugnant. And you have to be able to stand firm to your principles. I've heard many people describe me as understated and low-key. My kids would describe me more as just boring. But
there's some head nodding in row one.
Exactly.
Keep going.
I don't want to look back, but no one should mistake my low-key demeanor as a lack of resolve, as some kind of willingness to compromise on principle, because anybody who does would be making a very grave mistake. Now, my commitment.
Hey guys, we're here at Fox 5 Live in the digital newsroom. Just checking in with you. If you're watching live coverage right now on Capitol Hill of Christopher Wray. He is Trump's pick for FBI director to fill James Comey's shoes, and he's up on the stand here testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee, facing lots of questions, namely about mixed things. President Trump himself, what he thinks about him, and of course the controversy with Russia, the Russian controversy that's been ongoing and that's big in the news. And also he's expected to face possibly some questions about the FBI's relocation. As some people know, they're kind of still debating where they will relocate to, whether in the district or not. And so those are all sort of topics that we're going to be seeing here today. So now we have a split screen of the question and answer session here. This is live on Capitol Hill. We'll be watching out for some more sources to see what else is going on, whatever live sources we get in, any breaking news, we're going to cover it right here on Fox 5 Live. We'll be back with you guys in the digital newsroom shortly.
The same. The FBI is doing the investigating, the fact-finding, the accumulation of whether or not there is sufficient evidence of a crime to recommend bringing a prosecution against somebody. But the decision, the exercise of prosecutorial discretion, is made by the prosecutors, who are trained as lawyers, who are mindful of the department's policies and procedures about charging decisions. In my experience, it's less of a line and more of, in the best practical examples, there's a partnership between the agents and the prosecutors working together, both in the investigation stage, where even though the FBI has the lead, prosecutors can often be very effective in participating in the investigation. And then the best agents that I ever worked with didn't just hand it off to the prosecutor at trial and say goodbye. Even though there was a handoff and the assumption of greater responsibility by the prosecutor at trial, the best agents I worked with sat side by side with me at the counsel table when we tried the cases. So there is a shift of responsibility in the system, but again, it's a team effort, and I think that's the way it should be approached.
And obviously there are not limitless resources. So at some level, you as the director are going to regularly have to make prioritization decisions about counterterrorism investigations versus cyber investigations versus violent crime investigations, public corruption, et cetera. Lots and lots of really important missions that the Bureau has. When you're making those prioritization decisions, when would it be appropriate and when would it be inappropriate for Main Justice and beyond, and I mean particularly the White House, to be providing direction about FBI priorities and mind share and budget investments?
Well, I don't think the White House should be playing a role in prosecutorial decisions, period. From a programmatic perspective, which gets reflected in things like the budget that's submitted to Congress, more effort can be focused on particular types of cases. You know, there could be a period where we focus more on corporate fraud. There could be a period when we focus more resources on gun crime. There could be a period where we focus more resources on counterterrorism. So there is an effect on the scarcity of resources and the ability to prioritize certain investigations in that sense. And I think that's a process that occurs with input from law enforcement and the FBI, with input from the department. And at the end of the day, there is a president's budget that gets submitted to Congress for that process.
So I think I hear you offering a particular versus a general distinction, and I want to make sure I'm not putting words in your mouth. On an annual basis, there are going to be decisions made around budgeting, for instance, about those programs. But it's never appropriate for the White House to be providing, or political officials to be providing specific direction about specific cases that you're investigating.
That's my view.
We're nearly at time, and I'm going to stay for a couple more hours for whatever extra rounds we have, and I want to drill into cyber more deeply there. But first, one specific connection to your last line of questioning. Do you believe that the Russians were involved in trying to influence the 2016 election?
Well, Senator, as I said before, all I've seen is the public intelligence community assessment, but I have no reason to doubt the intelligence community's assessment. I haven't seen all the rest of the information, but what I've seen, I have no reason to doubt it.
For those of us who read intelligence on a daily or near daily basis, this is indisputable. It's also indisputable that in 2018 and 2020, they're going to be back. And the main tool that those who want to destroy American institutions have is not by creating new problems, but by trying to exploit and exacerbate existing problems. And American public distrust is one of the most valuable targets the Russians have to try to divide us against ourselves. And you're being considered to lead an agency that's going to have to play a frontline role in restoring that public trust. You've got a big and high calling, and many of us are grateful at your willingness to serve. Mr. Chairman, I'll reserve my questions for the next round.
I might add, before they get involved in our 18 and 20 elections, they're going to be involved in the September elections in Germany. Chancellor Merkel already knows that. Before I go to Senator Klobuchar, I put in the record letter of support for Mr. Wray from former DOJ officials. The letter was signed by many former senior DOJ officials from across the political spectrum, including a number who worked in the Obama administration. They wrote that Mr. Wray, quote, has the judgment, the integrity, independence, experience, and commitment to the rule of law to be an excellent FBI director, end of quote. And we also support from Mr. Wray's former boss, Larry Thompson, who served as Deputy Attorney General, Bush administration. He wrote that Mr. Wray's, quote, dedication to public service and our great country is deep, admirable, and unparalleled. And he praised Mr. Wray as a strong, quote, unquote, strong, independent professional. These records will be included without objection. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Mr. Wray. It is good to see your wife, Helen, there, and your kids as well. Our daughters are friends. And I learned from non-FBI sources that your daughter flew in on a red-eye tonight and arrived at 4:30 a.m. And the fact that she's kept her eyes open through this entire hearing is a testament to her devotion to her dad. And on a more serious matter, I know you to be a decent person and a good and devoted dad. So I think that's a pretty good start here. And I thank you for your answers, particularly the recent discussion you had with Senator Sass about the irrefutable evidence that you've been able to see on the Russian influence in our election, and the answers you've given the other senators. And I thought your opening statement reflected the fact that you see the gravity of this moment in time when you're coming in to lead an agency and be nominated to lead an agency of people who put themselves out on the front line every day without fear or favor. And we owe it to them, but we also owe it to this country to bring back the trust that Senator Sass has talked about in terms of this government in Washington. So my first question is, when you ran the criminal division in the Justice Department, did you ever receive a request from the president or other high-ranking officials to just let a case go?
No.
And I think you answered one of my colleagues, if the president asked you to do that, I think you said you would try to talk them out of it, and if a president would not rescind that request, you would resign. Is that right?
I would try to take all appropriate action, which would include potentially having to resign, yes.
Okay, and from time to time, probably in your career, when I was a prosecutor for 8 years, I would sometimes get comments from people, oh, that case, don't do anything about that, whether it be at a dinner or someone calling my office, and I had a process where I would tell my deputy, I would most likely not tell the prosecutor working on the case. I had 400 people, unless I thought for some reason they needed to know that, but if I did, I would tell them this can not at all influence what you're doing. And I think you know that this happens not just to the FBI director, but it happens to people underneath you. And so that's why I appreciated your answer about the process. You have to have processes in place, because it's not just the FBI director that get those calls. Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, Senator, thank you. I think you said it very well. To me, process is so important. And the reason process is so important is because people need to have confidence in the outcome. If there is a decision to charge somebody, people need to have confidence that the process that led to that was fair, impartial, and consistent with the law. Likewise, if there's a decision to close an investigation without charges, people need to have confidence that if there was something there, the process would have found it. So process is terribly important, and I think the tone needs to be set at the top. And I will say that having worked with lots of FBI agents, the thing that is distinctive about all of them is that they will follow the facts and the law wherever it takes them. And sometimes people don't like it, but that's what makes it such a beautiful thing to behold if you're a prosecutor.
Right. How about your view of working with local law enforcement? We have a very good group in Minnesota, our FBI there. They stepped in, Special Agent in Charge Rick Thornton and his group stepped in when we had the stabbing at the shopping mall this last fall, worked very well with our local law enforcement and our chief. Do you want to briefly comment on your views on working with local law enforcement?
Thank you, Senator. I think working with state and local law enforcement is hugely important, especially because there is so much on the FBI's plate right now that there needs to be partnership between the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies and the state and locals in sort of a force multiplier way. There's all kinds of support that FBI can provide to law enforcement, whether it's partnering on investigations, training. The National Academy is a great thing that, you know, when I talk to people in state and local law enforcement, they consistently praise. I'm gratified by the support that has come in over the last several days from lots of state and local law enforcement organizations, and I think that's just a terribly important relationship, because the reality is the threats we face are way too many for one agency, much less the FBI, to do all by itself.
Yeah, I think Director Comey saw it that way as well, and I had respect for how he worked with local law enforcement, and I appreciated your words about him. From time to time, there have been proposals to split up the FBI's criminal and national security missions and remove matters like counterterrorism, counterespionage from the FBI's jurisdiction to kind of spin them off. Some have even advocated the creation of an American version of the way the Brits handle this. And when this was discussed in the early 2000s, and FBI Director Bob Mueller rejected it, he said it would be a step backward. Do you agree with his assessment about this type of proposal?
Senator, I remember being fairly actively involved in that issue back in the early 2000s, working with people at the FBI. I thought it was a terrible idea then. And it's hard for me to imagine circumstances have changed that would make me think it's a good idea now. I think the one thing we learned.
All right, guys. So we're actually just flashing it back into the newsroom for now. That Senate Judiciary hearing is still going on. It's going to be ongoing for the day as Christopher Wray testifies before them. And not to make this all politics today, but we just have a lot of politics stuff kind of coming down the pipeline today and in live events. So we're going to kind of bring you over across the country over to Las Vegas shortly for Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He's going to be speaking about sanctuary cities and fighting violent crimes. Before we do that, let's chat a little bit, because we just saw a little bit of breaking news coming out about Representative Steve Scalise. If you guys remember, he was in the ICU right here in Washington, D.C. at Washington MedStar Health a MedStar hospital in Northeast DC. He is the House Majority Whip who was injured in that shooting in Alexandria, Virginia. We were all here on the news desk that day. What a crazy day. The shooting at the Congressional Baseball Practice game. It was early in the morning over in Alexandria, Virginia, and just really a horrible day in general. And Scalise was, at first they said he was in, serious condition. They upgraded it to something worse. What happened, Emily? You were...
I remember the day of, they were kind of casual about it. And
right.
then the next day they're like, well, no, he got shot in the hip and his hip bone shattered, which, I mean, just imagine like your bone being shattered inside you. So they realized a little bit afterwards that it actually was a huge deal, and he has been in and out of surgery, I think, since, and he was upgraded to, critical or serious.
That's right.
The other day,
it was
recently.
Right. It was upgraded. So the initial reports were that things weren't as bad as they were. And throughout the day, we heard different reports kind of going back and forth. Then it was sort of a stable, he's in the ICU now with an infection. It's still serious.
That was this week.
That was, and the previous week. And then now, the breaking news now, in this moment, we just got, Fox just confirmed that Steve Scalise is out of the ICU, the intensive care unit, but is still in serious condition after last week's infection concerns and surgery subsequently to that infection. So we know that he has to first kind of overcome the infection issues before they can move him out into other spaces or even out back into the world. And it'll be interesting to see, when he's finally released, what they do for him, if we hear from him, hopefully, and just, as things kind of roll out with that. But I do remember that day. And Ben, you were here for that too, right?
Yeah, I was here, but it was just like kind of caught everybody off guard in a way, because you wouldn't expect, a man just come out to, especially for a Republican, practice and just shoot up the place. So, it was just a shocker, and just hope, he recovers, and hope the family and everybody just stay high spirited and know that he's fighting. So that's the big thing.
Yeah, and Fox, again, confirming he is still in serious condition and faces at least a couple more surgeries, which have not been scheduled. So it may be a little bit more before we actually hear more directly about him or from him, really. But anyway, little breaking news for your Wednesday, July 12th. We're here in the digital newsroom, guys. You're watching Fox 5 Live. We're Washington, D.C.'s Fox 5 local news, and we're taking you around to all the live sources that we got coming in, including this one I'm just seeing right now. Like I mentioned, Attorney General Jeff Sessions is slated to speak over in Las Vegas. This is a live event coming up. We're planning for this about combating violent crime and sanctuary cities and their efforts and law enforcement efforts to combat violent crime. So this will be kind of interesting to peep in on. We also still have the confirmation hearings of Christopher Wray, whom President Trump wants to confirm as the next FBI director. So that's going on Capitol Hill all day today. We'll check back in with that in a little bit. And in addition, Vice President Pence spoke earlier this morning, today, at American University. He had some remarks for the students there, so we'll check in with that as well later on in the show. So now over to Las Vegas, guys, as we get ready to hear from the Attorney General.
There's seventh most senior person in the entire office, and the junior man of appeals. Kim for sure. And I guess Dan now. But yeah, then no, it's actually Nick is actually. Oh no, it's not. Yeah, technically. Yeah, other than Kim. Kim has a lot on, but that's yeah. She's but he with her, yeah. With her, May or June of 2011, and until May or June of 2013 in Texas, and I came back to July. It's been 2 years, literally 2 years yesterday. And then back, yeah. Oh, the hair. I looked at it very cute. I had this suit since my Christmas. I got a lot of stuff. Look at that. Like, got out of the airport, going to ATS. Or that, they show my YouTube. It's ridiculous because I wear like the same suit, like 35 plus videos on YouTube. You get a bunch of white shirts, a bunch of ties, you wear the same suit. That's the thing, it's the navy blue suit. Yeah, I don't think anybody but me really knows. No. No one necessarily told you it's with the best days of anyone ever. I was Starbucks in Agnes. It's like a movie star day.
Guys, while we wait on this press conference here, this remarks on sanctuary cities from Jeff Sessions. This is over in Las Vegas, Nevada. We're actually going to go back to D.C. and check back in with the Senate Judiciary Committee where Christopher Wray is still testifying, kind of get a little sound on that, and then we'll take you back over when that all starts up. So thanks for sticking with us here, and let us know what you think. If you want to chat with us or have any questions, feel free to use that live chat box on the side of your screen. All right, we're going to go back over to Capitol Hill, and then we'll take you back to Las Vegas.
The intelligence community's assessment of the efforts by Russia to interfere with our election, so too, I have no reason to doubt what I hear in the intelligence community's assessment about the importance of Section 702 as a vital tool in our efforts to protect America. I look forward to learning more about that tool and about how it can be strengthened, enhanced, and used effectively and appropriately. But everything I've heard suggests to me that that's a tool that needs to be a high priority for the country to make sure it gets renewed appropriately.
I think it'd be very important, again, as we discuss it and we debate maybe some safety measures to make sure that it's not abused. I, for one, think that most of them are already in place. I think it's very important, probably a little bit of time with the Director of National Intelligence, who before the Senate Armed Services Committee said that people will die if we go dark. Then that's a pretty profound statement from a high-ranking official, and I think that we need to just look ahead and make sure that we have to preserve those kind of tools for the agency and other intelligence agencies. I guess the only other question that I have of you, I'm gonna yield back some of my time, and I apologize, I won't be here for the next round because I'll be presiding, unless Senator Sass would like to preside. I know how much you like that, but I just want to go back and again echo, I think you've been very direct in answer to Senator Sass's questions and other questions about Russian meddling. I don't think there's anybody in the Congress who would doubt that Russia meddles in elections. They have meddled in elections for a very long time. The emergence of the cyber domain has basically amplified their ability to do it more quickly and maybe on a broader basis. But assuming that, beyond what's already under investigation, do you have any sense of what more the FBI would do beyond the investigation that Director Mueller is tasked with that you could conceive that you all may proceed with?
Well, Senator, I think there's more that I don't know yet than that I do as an outsider sitting before this committee. So I look forward to making that a high priority. I will say that in addition to providing all appropriate support to former Director Mueller's special counsel investigation, there is, of course, also a counterintelligence function that the FBI has to play. And I'm sure there are things that the FBI, working with its partners in the intelligence community, will need to do to protect us going forward, which is sort of a different role than what Special Counsel Mueller was presumably doing, which is more of a backwards-looking type of thing. But there's synergy between the two, of course, lessons learned and that kind of thing.
Well, thank you. And again, you should be first very proud that you were nominated for this position. You should be very proud of the demeanor and the kinds of questions and the insights that others on this committee have given to you. That I think it's a true testament to just the quality of your work experience and the quality of you as the next director of the FBI, and I look forward to supporting your nomination. Thank you, and congratulations to your family.
Thank you, Senator.
I was deferring to the senator from California, but Senator Franken, I think you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, guys, looks like we're going to pull out of this Capitol Hill hearing, which is going on all day. We'll go over to a couple of different events going on. Right now there's a House presser on the Hill with some House members, but also it looks like Jeff Sessions is about to go up over in Las Vegas. So let's check in over there.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Duncan, and I'm the criminal chief here in the District of Nevada. And on behalf of the acting United States Attorney Steve Myrie, who unfortunately is currently in trial, I would like to welcome our law enforcement partners, our invited guests, my fellow Assistant United States Attorneys, and the media here today. Most importantly, on behalf of the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Nevada, I would like to welcome the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions. Having the Attorney General of the United States here is both a great honor and a great opportunity. We in law enforcement have the opportunity to share ideas and to craft solutions to the important problems that face our community today. Problems such as how can we lower our violent crime rate? And how can we effectively combat the opioid epidemic that's sweeping the nation? One of the most important lessons that I've learned during my time as a prosecutor is that law enforcement works best. We are most effective when we work as a team. That's why I'm so happy to see all of our law enforcement partners gathered here around the table. One of our most valued partners is the Nevada Attorney General's Office. And I would like to thank Attorney General Adam Laxalt for joining us. We have successfully partnered with Attorney General Laxalt's office to prosecute child pornography cases and human trafficking cases, among others. At this time, I'd like to extend my welcome again on behalf of the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Nevada, and I'd like to ask Attorney General Laxalt to say a few words and to introduce the Attorney General of the United States. Attorney General Axel.
Thank you very much. All right, good morning, everybody. How we doing? All right. It's a pleasure to be here to introduce Attorney General Sessions, and it's an honor to be here with all of our Nevada law enforcement. As you know, we've taken great pride at the Attorney General's office to be a leader, to be the top law enforcement agency, to work with you all every day and try to find solutions to the issues that face our state. And I hope we've made good on that promise and will continue to do so. As a U.S. Senator for Alabama, General Sessions focuses energies on helping to build up the military. He fought for the rule of law. He worked for principles of limited government, as well as working to return taxpayer dollars back to Americans. And as our 84th United States Attorney General, he joins us today to discuss violent crime and how that tears at the fabric of our society every day, as well as discuss dangerous sanctuary city policies that release violent felons back into our community and endanger our state, endanger people all across the country. We are honored that all law enforcement would come here today to be able to work with Attorney General Sessions, and we are certainly welcome the change of approach from the U.S. Attorney General, that we would work collaboratively as law enforcement across the state and here in Nevada. We feel that and we appreciate that. And with that, I want to introduce Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. It is good to be with you and good to be in Nevada. And this is an area that's showing real strength and effectiveness in dealing with crime in America, and we want to keep at it. And I want to thank Andrew for your kind remarks and your leadership here. I met with Steve Myrie a little earlier. I got to tell you, it's impressive when you have a tough case, controversial case, and you got the top guy leading the battle and going to court, standing up, defending the office and the principles of law. I just want to say that I'm not taking sides and comment on the case, of just to say that leadership requires a lot of times our people to step up and be counted. And Steve, I appreciate his leadership there. Adam, it's good to see you again, and I appreciate the leadership you're giving. I had 2 years as Attorney General of Alabama, and but I know you've got some really good ideas, and you're trying to work together to see if we can, you as a state, enhance the cooperative, effective work that you do every day to make our communities safe. I think everybody knows you've got a fighter here, an Iraq veteran in Adam, and he's well known nationally, and I really appreciate his friendship and support. Speaking of fights, as you all know, we have a multi-front battle in front of us right now. An increase in violent crime nationwide. We've had a bump here a number of years ago. It's a little bit flatter now, I understand, but it's still a very serious situation here. We've got vicious gangs out there, an opioid epidemic, threats from terrorism, and human traffickers. These are just some of the challenges that we in law enforcement face. We have to stand up to it. We have to defend and protect our law officers who are out there on the front lines every day trying to make our communities safe, create a peaceful environment where prosperity can occur, children can play in the neighborhood and go to the parks, and where businesses and grocery stores will open and people can be served in their neighborhoods. We cannot allow neighborhoods to be taken over by drug dealers. Since the early 1990s, the crime rate has steadily come down across our country. That is until the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years. Now, violent crime is once again on the rise in many parts of America. The murder rate, for example, has surged 10%, 11% really nationwide in just 1 year, 2015. We don't have the numbers for 2016, but it looks like they'll be up again. That increase of 10.8% was the largest increase in murders since 1968. So we've had a long, good trend of downward crime rates, and that's beginning to pop up. I feel that because when I became United States Attorney in 1981 in Mobile, Alabama, crime had been surging for 20 years and growing, and gradually the trend changed, and we've had almost 30 years of decline. But I do not want to see it go up. Not on my watch, not on your watch. I know you feel the same way. In Las Vegas, we're seeing some increases in gangs, I understand, and violence that goes with that. So these numbers are shocking and they're informative, but the numbers don't really reflect the human beings, the lives, and the families that are destroyed by this kind of violence. You know the stories too well yourselves. Right now in Las Vegas is mourning the death of 18-year-old Eric Brooks, a football star who just graduated from Spring Mountain High School. He had a promising life ahead of him, a life we will never get to see. Witnesses say that he was sitting on a park bench just before he was shot and bled to death in the street. Too many in our communities have to live in constant fear of violence that breaks out or in their own neighborhoods. Too many are living as hostages in their own homes. We cannot accept this status quo. We cannot accept it. This Department of Justice will not accept it. Every American has the right to be safe in their homes and in their neighborhoods. The first and foremost important job of government, really any government, is to protect the safety and security of its people. If we fail at that task, then every government initiative ceases to be important and to be positive. And I want to say right here clearly to those of you in state and local law enforcement, we know what you do. We know that 85% of the law officers in this country are state and local. We know in the federal government, this Attorney General knows, that no improvement in the crime rate in America, no improvement in public safety will be achieved without our state officials, without our police, and without our sheriffs. That's just the way it is. And one of the great improvements that led to the decline in crime in America these 30-some-odd years, I believe, has been improved law enforcement, improved city and police and sheriff techniques about how to confront crime in an effective way. We've added resources, we've had better training, and we've done a lot of great things, and that's paid off for us. But now we are facing a new challenge. I feel it in my bones. We do not want to see it get out of control again, and I hope that we can intensify our interest and our effort to make this situation get better. That's what we will try to do. So we have the responsibility to reverse, really, this rise in crime. The President sent us an executive order not long after I became Attorney General. It said, your job is to reduce crime in America. How about that? Pretty simple. But that was basically the gist of that order. And I feel it. I mean, that's what I want to do. I know that's what you want to do. So we feel like that we have the support we need in the Department of Justice, and we're going to support you in that effort. To that end, I've directed our federal prosecutors to work closely with law enforcement partners at the federal, state, local, and tribal level to combat crime and take violent criminals off the streets. We're just going to do that every day. As we all know, the vast majority of people just want to obey the law and live their lives safely. A disproportionate amount of crime is committed by a very small group of criminals. Mathematics tells us that. We know that from study after study. And the more of them that we apprehend, prosecute fairly and justly, and incarcerate does in fact have an impact in reducing crime. How many people do you know that are likely to murder somebody next month? More of those kind of people that are in the slammer, the fewer people that are going to get murdered next month, next year, or 3 years from today. So it does impact crime. It also cracks down and sends a message to young people who may be thinking this is a glamorous lifestyle. But when they see somebody they thought they admired get 20 years in the federal slammer or the state slammer, then it maybe takes the bloom off that rose. They don't look like they're so smart. Maybe they choose a better lifestyle than the criminal lifestyle. Budgets are tight, but we've worked hard in Washington to find some money for our Department of Justice field operations, the front lines, the U.S. attorneys. So we're going to save some money. We're going to move some money around. We're going to do everything we can to get more people out in the field to help work with our state and local people and work with our federal agencies to crack down on crime. We think we'll be able to move at least 300 out of there. We got about a 2% cut in our budget, but we think we can find 300 new AUSAs. I believe that's the point of the spear. I believe that's where the work is most effectively getting done, and we think it's time for us in Washington to review our bureaucracy. We got some great people there, but review it and be more efficient there and see if we can't deploy more resources to the front lines. In Nevada, doctors are writing 94 prescriptions for painkillers per every 100 residents. I heard that statistic. It's probably true elsewhere in the country, not just here. But I know Alabama, I think, is #1 per capita in the country, or 2 in the number of opioid prescriptions per citizen. So this, to me, shows that we've got a nationwide problem with opioids. And DEA tells us that 80% of the people addicted to heroin started on prescription drugs. Well, that's a shocking number. I think it will be one of my efforts, and I hope yours, to crack down on the abuse of prescription drugs. We need to go after drug companies. We just hit one for $35 million recently for not spending, not monitoring their distribution in a proper fashion. We need to urge our...
Guys, you're watching Attorney General Jeff Sessions. This is a live feed right now. He's speaking about violent crime, sanctuary cities, and the opioid crisis, as you've heard in the past few minutes here, live from Las Vegas. We're going to jump over now to the House of Representatives, which we heard the other day in Congress, actually. The Senate decided to kind of push into their recess in August. They're going to keep going on, but the House so far has not said that they will. They will have their typical recess in August, but we're going over to the Freedom Caucus, a group of 36 Republicans within the House here, and their initiatives going forward. Let's listen in.
Indeed, we've got to make some decisions on tax reform, couple those two together. So we do see a budget decision getting made, but doing a budget without real decisions on tax reform is meaningless at this point. So it's important that we bring the two together. You didn't get called on, Chad, but we're going to let you go since you got us in the air conditioning, okay? Yeah, he's a nice guy. Yeah.
You don't want to get back into the corner like a bunch of grasses. Why would you think that this legislative tactic that's as old as pills is go up against deadlines that you think that leadership wouldn't want to keep, do a charade for a week or so in all this, so it looks like you're doing something, and then come back and you got the fiscal deadline at the end of September, the debt ceiling, and all these other things queued up as well. We don't have time. That's what they usually do. Why don't you think it would play out that way, despite you all saying?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that would force it to not play out that way. You have to take a vote in order to go home in August. I can't imagine members of Congress taking a vote and allowing unanimous consent to go on and just for everybody to go home. I would think at least one member of Congress would probably object to that. And but that's different than everybody having to go on the record to say we're going to go home. And so generally, because there's no roll call vote on that. And so as you look at that, deadlines are important. But the interesting thing is we have these deadlines that we look at, and the whole list that my good friend Jim Jordan from Ohio put out How are we expected to get all of those done during the month of September? You and I both know that that's not going to happen. They're going to put it all together in one package. We're just saying, let's break it up. Let's make sure that we have a more plausible plan to get it done. Listen, we support getting things done, but here's a fascinating question that you posed. We were able to do a repeal bill that 50 of the senators over there in the upper chamber voted for. Most of the people up here voted for, and we sent it to President Obama's desk. The American people are not going to understand. If they were willing to vote for it and send it to President Obama, why are they not willing to send it to President Trump? Were they just doing it for show? I would hope not. And so to suggest that Chuck Schumer is actually going to help out on a repeal bill defies not only his own rhetoric, but his commitment to his constituency. He said he's not going to help us. So are we going to fix Obamacare? The answer to that is no. Right, because there's a revenue number that comes with that. Right, and obviously, you want to go ahead and speak to that?
Well, I just want to make one point. I think you got to look at the context. And I said this to a couple of you yesterday, I think. Did the American people elect Republicans to come here and place a new tax on the American economy called the Border Adjustment Tax? And did they elect us to come here and increase discretionary spending, the second highest increase in the last 10 years? My guess is they didn't elect us to do that, but that's exactly what we're being asked to do. Vote for a budget that increases discretionary spending $70 billion. We know when it gets to the Senate, Mr. Schumer is going to want some non-defense discretionary increases of some level. So we're talking $100 billion increase, probably at a minimum on the discretionary side, and we're going to save somewhere between $150 and $200 billion in mandatory over 10 years. And oh, by the way, there may be a brand new tax, a border adjustment tax placed on the American economy. So for us to say we'd like to see the tax bill first, and we'd like to have real savings over time so that we're not further bankrupting the country, how is that a radical position? That's the position we told Jody, or a bunch of people said, that's not what we told the American people we were going to do. So our position is exactly where the Republican Party is, exactly where the American people elect us to be. That's all we're saying, and that's all we're negotiating for. It's like that's a pretty basic position.
So let me answer your question. Even though we have not taken an official position on opposing that, we have had multiple discussions. So if a budget is put forth today at a $200 billion in mandatory spending, and without decisions on tax reform, there would not be enough votes to pass it in the House because of the conservative concerns.
With regard to the debt ceiling, you're saying that the budget is going to be kicked down the road based on tax. What, it's not mandatory cuts in the budget, what are you going to want to see with the ones that are debt ceiling to be able to go through that? And to follow up on that, are you working with the White House on this in particular, Ms. Mulvaney? Are you in communications with them on debt ceiling?
So Mike, on a number of fronts, we've had a number of conversations with the administration, sometimes almost on a daily basis, whether it deals with debt ceiling. They believe that we need to go ahead and do that. As you know, there's a division within the administration. Somebody wants a clean, Secretary Mnuchin, I think, wants a clean debt ceiling. Now, we've never done a clean debt ceiling when we had President Obama in the White House. I can't imagine us doing a clean debt ceiling when we have President Trump in the White House. That being said, we've got 2 or 3 options that are out there. Probably the easiest option for us to get done would be to do a debt ceiling increase with some structural reforms that would allow us to not only never have the question of defaulting on our debt in the future taken off the table. We're willing, many of us, Schweikert and Tom McClintock have done a lot of work on that to attach that. That's as close to a clean debt ceiling, but even if we don't go there, you can look at changing the reconciliation instructions where you don't need 8 Democrats in the Senate. You could go and actually attach it to a budget reconciliation vehicle to actually get it done with only 50 senators, so if we run into a problem. I think there are a number of options, but that's why we don't need to wait until the last minute to try to figure that out. That's why it's critical we go ahead and do that now.
Mark, could I just add one thing? A lot of what we're told we've got to take into consideration in dealing with the repeal of Obamacare and of tax reform is scores, CBO scores. There is no entity in all of Washington I'm aware of that is wrong by bigger margins more often than CBO. Dr. Laffer has a model we could use to create competitive scoring where we could score the scores, but we just shouldn't be reliant on CBO. They're too wrong too often, and they've done too much damage already.
All right, so let me close with this. How long do the American people need to wait to get a tax cut? How long do they have to wait before there's more money in their pocket? We've been talking about repealing Obamacare for 7 years. We've been talking about doing tax reform for at least 12 months. The time is now to act. Let's go ahead and get this economy rolling again. And let's make sure that we support the president's agenda, which is ultimately the agenda of the American people. We're here committed. Without any results, we believe that there should be no recess. And so as we look to that, we're going to count on you to help us carry that message to the American people. Thank y'all so much for coming in. Chad, thank you for making sure that we didn't sweat through this press conference. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys, looks like that presser is wrapping up, and shortly we're going to go over to another event here in D.C. It's actually a local event that's making sort of national headlines, though. It's the National Tenant March. It's low-income people, low-income tenants and housing advocates from across the nation, actually, who are coming together all across the country to march in opposition of the proposed budget cuts to federal housing programs from President Trump. Elizabeth Warren is going to be leading this charge. It looks like it's just coming up now, starting on Capitol Hill, I believe, and we have a camera there to watch this all go down. So again, Senator Elizabeth Warren will be making some opening remarks, and there'll be a little bit of a rally and a march. Let's go over there. We're just getting it set up. Check it out.
Allow me now to bring up the Executive Director for Communities, New York Communities for Change,
right, you guys are watching this Tenant March take place. It's underway now, and this is actually Church of the Reformation on Capitol Hill. You can see lots of low-income residents there gathering, and others, of course, gathering to rally for this. It seems like the march will happen after. This is sort of just the kickoff, and we'll be hearing from Senator Elizabeth Warren as well as this continues. So we'll take a look and a listen, and we'll be back in with some more information as we have it. Let's listen into this rally.
It's a drastic housing crisis that goes back to the beginning of this country. That every housing crisis that this country has ever seen has been brought to us by our friends on Wall Street. Is that right? From the Great Depression, where banks over-speculated, causing an economic crash, placing millions of people into poverty and homelessness, to the redlining crisis, where banks refused to give loans to people of color, that segregated our neighborhoods, that segregated our communities, that divided us, to the most recent foreclosure crisis, where banks crashed the economy by peddling loans to people of color and people across this country that they knew they could not pay back. And now we are in a new crisis. We are in a new crisis, a rental crisis, where people all over this country cannot afford to live. That's right. Where people in every city in America are being displaced. Say what? And this new crisis is brought to us by a few new players to the Wall Street world. Blackstone, Goldman Sachs, Olympia Capital, and our new friends in the private equity world.
Let's go get him!
And guess what Donald Trump did?
Say what?
He gave them the top positions in his White House. And now, they are running housing policy for this entire country. So what we will now expect is more homelessness, more evictions, more people on the streets, because this administration and administrations before it, let's be real, under Obama, under Bush, under Clinton, under Bush, under Reagan, they all did this. They all gave our housing away to Wall Street. What we need is a new path forward, a new path where every single person here, every single person outside of these doors can afford to live. And that's what we're here today for. We don't just want to stop the billions and billions of cuts to HUD. We want to stop the greedy, malicious behavior of Wall Street on our communities throughout this country. So next, to introduce our keynote speaker today, I want to introduce Jesse from Massachusetts, from MHS.
Thank you. My name is Jesse from Massachusetts, where families that live in the manufactured housing community rather than homeless, and I am here to be proud to introduce our United States Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Bien, bien. ¿Qué te cuentas?
Bien, ¿y tú estás aquí en Washington? Tú estás aquí en Washington. Ah, ¿qué? No, porque estamos aquí en Washington. Claro, yo te llamo 20,000 veces. No, ya.
All right, guys, checking in here. Our photog Doug is there on the scene of this Tenant March, which is slated to begin just about now. We'll kind of see what kind of footage he can get here. But again, just if you're just joining us, this event, if he stays with it, it's a group of poor and lower income people from across the country gathering here to protest President Trump's proposed budget cuts for housing and urban development to aid in the affordability crisis here and elsewhere. You can see people gathering there at Church of the Reformation in Northeast DC. That's what you're looking at now. Looks like he's put down that camera. But the march is slated to begin with multiple people, tenants, advocates, community members, and leaders who are joining in for really a full afternoon of events here. They're reported to rally first and then walk and deliver a letter and march to Blackstone lobbying firm, which is a private equity firm that Trump has been tied to, that functions as the largest landlord of the United States, a big driver of evictions, personal evictions from housing. So that's what you heard him yelling about there, protesting Blackstone as well. So again, marchers really coming from all over the United States, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Delaware, and we'll see if this gets underway here, if we kind of continue to stick with this footage before we switch it up again. But that is what you guys are looking at. Join in on the conversation with me, guys, on the live chat, and if you have any questions or comments, let us know. We're here in the digital newsroom. We'll see what else we have of this march, and then we'll take it to something else.
No, right? I know you did. Everything needs to be lightened up. You know, you got all my buddies just disappeared. They gone ahead. Every time I turn it to my vehicle, I'm the only one still there. I like the back door. You are here. I got to take care of some luggage, bro. I'll see you around soon, okay? Okay. All right. Take care. Good seeing you, Jason. I mean, yeah. Jason! Let's get inside. I love your hat. Yeah. So that's what you put the neck one down. I like that though. Oh, that would have been it is what it is. But I like
All right, guys, switching gears again. You're looking now at aerials in the right corner of your screen of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is the continued search for the 4 missing men. If you've been hearing about this story, it's still quite mysterious what's going on. There have been some important pieces of evidence recovered, but there actually are no physical remains found of these 4 men who have gone missing. The investigation remains wide open, according to the district attorney and police as of this morning. So right now, aerials of what I believe is a continued search there, and it's strange to kind of see them uncover these rocks and look in that way, but they're looking at this sprawling property of multiple acres where one man, a person of interest in the case, lived, or rather his parents owned. But that's all we really know. They're continuing to dig and search this property to see if they can find more. Again, it's more of like a farm property in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And it's still a very mysterious case. This was a big sort of talker and trending in the Philadelphia area. Now we're getting some national footage of this. So let's take a look at this, if I can bring it full screen, and see what we can listen in on. Yeah, guys, actually no sound on this, just aerials of the search process itself. And I'm reading investigators really have given very few details about this and what led them to this property to search this 90-acre property. You can see there in the wide pan out, sort of a larger view of this as our chopper footage is getting it. They're still sifting through these rocks and dirt to find more answers. Nothing yet revealed. It's becoming quite, like I said, the mysterious case. We'll be looking forward to some more details from police forces and FBI and other officials there in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So that's what you are looking at there. Continuing search for these 4 missing boys, and still no real confirmed links to each other or links to this person of interest. They've received tips that the 4 men knew each other, apparently, according to police, but that is really all we know about that. So they're continuing to find more tips, and we're continuing to watch the story, as are, I'm sure, many people across the nation, and most concentratedly in Pennsylvania, where this story originated. But now we are seeing this footage of the search, and it's quite wild to kind of see them sift through these sort of big chunks of rock and woods and forest and whatnot. Yeah, we'll continue to get some more information on this, guys, and if we hear about a press conference or anything else coming in, we will be sure to grab that live. So take a look at these aerials just a quick second more. We're going to come back to D.C., where we still are keeping an eye on that Tenant March, the rally to protest President Trump's proposed budget cuts to HUD. And we're going to go back into the Senate Judiciary Committee, where Christopher Wray, President Trump's pick for the next FBI director, he's still on the stand testifying before that committee. So let's take a look there, and we'll jump around a little bit in a little bit.
Over an ongoing, but unauthorized by Congress, surveillance program. And you testified previously you hadn't been read into all the details of it. And it seemed in some ways you were going on a gut hunch. You were following people who you knew were thoroughly read in, who you'd practiced closely with, and whom you admired. I'm just characterizing roughly what I heard before. But now in hindsight, you've had time to better understand what was going on, what was the contest, and what were the issues. In hindsight, were you right to be willing to throw your career aside and to be willing to join these folks in resigning had they had to? And would you do that again?
As to the first part of your question, Senator, I have not for any minute ever regretted my willingness to resign, as I explained it to Deputy Attorney General Comey at that time. My decision was not based solely on gut. My decision was based on knowledge, very close working knowledge with the range of people who were read in, and knowing that they were not, as I said to Senator Whitehouse, not shrinking violets, very tough on terror, very thoughtful, intellectually honest people, and people who, by the way, didn't all agree with each other all the time. So when I put all that together, my familiarity with those people, how they think, how they come out on war on terror issues, and knowing that they felt strongly enough that they were willing to resign over much greater knowledge of the program than I had at the time, I was confident then that resigning with them, if necessary, was the right decision. And now later, having learned many more of the facts that weren't available to me then, I'm even more confident that it would have been the right decision.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Former Attorney General Bell, I think you quoted before, as saying that you should be willing to resign if necessary over conduct if you're pressed to engage in it that's either unethical, illegal, or unconstitutional. Could you just explore for me for a few more minutes what were the values that you brought to that decision, and what values among those three or others would you bring to having to make a similar decision in the future if you get pressed to do something that meets one of those three tests suggested by former Attorney General Bell?
Well, the values I brought to that particular decision were the knowledge that it was the appropriate parts of the Justice Department and the FBI were doing their job, doing their duty to evaluate the legality of the program in question. And I thought that, knowing the confidence that I had in them, in their commitment to duty, their ability to do their job, that needed to be respected even to the point of me having to resign to support them in it. I'm not sure if I got all of your questions, so I might need you to refresh me.
That's more than satisfactory, thank you. Acting Attorney General Sally Yates was fired after she refused to defend the travel ban based on her concerns the order wasn't lawful or consistent with the facts. If you were fired or resign for refusing to carry out a presidential order, will you commit to come to Congress to testify about that decision and what drove you to make that decision?
Well, certainly if I legally and appropriately can. I mean, I'd need to know the circumstances of any particular situation, but I would want to comply with the law and the rules first and foremost. But if I can, I would comply with any lawful request from Congress.
Let me, if I now, in my last minute, return to a question that was raised earlier. I just want to make sure we've gotten this clearly. Senator Graham asked you about an email to Donald Trump Jr. Offering the Trump campaign very high level and sensitive information, and this is a quote from the email, as part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump. Chief ethics lawyers for former presidents George W. Bush and President Obama have said, and this is a joint quote, "We've worked on political campaigns for decades and have never heard of an offer like this one. If we had, we would have insisted upon immediate notification of the FBI, and so would any normal campaign lawyer, official, or even senior volunteer. Russian interference in our election happened and may very well happen again. If a campaign staffer or a senator or someone working around them gets an offer of foreign government assistance to defeat its opponent, do you agree the right thing to do is to promptly notify the FBI?"
Senator, I would hope that anyone who is aware of an effort to, or an attempt to interfere with our elections would report that to the appropriate authorities. I mean, just whether it's somebody in a campaign or somebody anywhere else. I think especially in the context of cyber type intrusions, the FBI and others in the intelligence community depend on people who are receiving the contact from reaching out and coordinating with law enforcement intelligence community. And that's a big, important part of the messaging on that effort. And so I would think anybody in that situation, I would hope, would want to bring the issue to the attention of the appropriate authorities, assuming they think that something untoward or inappropriate has occurred.
Can you reach any other conclusion from that email other than something untoward and inappropriate is being proffered?
Senator, I haven't read the email. I haven't even had a chance to read any of the newspaper coverage. It's all happened during a time when I've spent all day going from one Senate building to another, meeting with all of your colleagues, and so I'm sorry, but I just don't know the details of the email.
I think Senator Graham's already asked for you to get ready on it and respond to us in the future. Do I have a few more minutes, or Senator Sass, do you have another round of questions? I understand we're waiting for Senator Flake, who may be on as well.
Another round, but we also have votes, so you can go 2 more, but not a full round. 2 more minutes.
I will conclude.
Thank you, sir.
Let me simply say to your family, I'm grateful for your willingness to undertake this. And to you personally, I'm grateful for your willingness to undertake this. As we spoke, I think we are at an absolutely essential moment for the future of rule of law and respect for our institutions and traditions in this country. And as you've heard from senators, both Republican and Democrat, this is an essential confirmation hearing and a critical role which you're undertaking because of the pace at which things are moving, because of the challenges and issues and allegations in front of us, because of the central role the FBI plays in counterintelligence, in enforcing our laws, in protecting our republic. And I am confident that you have the skills, the experience, and the value.
Hey guys, checking in. We're going to give you a little update on what you are looking at right now from the Fox 5 Live DC newsroom. Right now, Christopher Wray there is testifying. He's doing it all day, courtesy of C-SPAN there, on the stand before the Senate Judiciary Committee, up to be the director of the FBI. So he's been talking today. And then in the bottom right screen, we see this continued search by police for the 4 men that disappeared in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Now, a little background on this. They are searching right now this 90-acre farm owned by the family or the parents of Cosmo DiNardo, 20-year-old person of interest who was taken in last night on charge of possession of a firearm, and we believe questioned, but then he was released on bail. Emily, what happened? His father bailed him out.
for 10% in cash of his $1 million bail. And this is, it's his father's, also his property that they're now searching, because they believe they found some sort of evidence that could link this. They said that they have no evidence of human remains or anything like that, but just enough that they are searching it right now.
Yeah, and you can see this close up too. Here, they're really doing a big dig here on this property. Yeah, it's wild to kind of see. This is the footage we're getting from our chopper. Like Emily said, they are saying that there is some sort of obvious link to connect Cosmo DiNardo, the 20-year-old man, to the 4 missing men.
Who are all about that age too.
All 4 are between 18 and 22 years old. So that's quite interesting. But again, they were stressing that the gun charge he was brought in on is actually a totally separate investigation. So very, very interesting to see if that ends up being connected in some way. Again, investigators aren't really revealing too much as to what they have found vis-a-vis evidence as of late, or anything that really connects, like I said, DiNardo to these 4 boys, these 4 men. But the search continues here. You can see them setting up this big area here, and we saw pictures earlier of more just sort of throngs of officials going at it to search this property. It's becoming quite a talker. A lot of people are sort of obviously wondering what's up with these 4 missing men in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And so we're going to kind of continue to watch this case as it rolls out, but we're sure that officials will, leave no stone unturned and really look to get to the bottom of this. So continuing to see, and I don't know, were they saying that they believe there could have been foul play? We were reading a little bit about that.
Yeah, but likely them being missing for this long has to do with foul play.
Because they have been missing for a little bit, and it's 4 men between the ages of 18 and 22 that just vanished. No bodies found, no evidence right now.
They just didn't show up to either class, or some of them their construction jobs, and that's when people started questioning, and now obviously it's a whole big thing that
exactly. I'm reading too, a car belonging to one of the men was found in a mall parking lot, an outdoor mall, shopping mall. So there's evidence that they were somewhere, but they have not been found yet. So I wonder what this will turn out to be. Hopefully it's not all a big prank, and hopefully it's not violent, of course, as well.
Hopefully they're live.
Right. So we're watching that, guys. Continuing kind of footage of that, and we'll keep an eye on that for now. All right, guys. Well, back to the sound on Capitol Hill here inside the Senate Judiciary Committee. While we double screen it here, we watch this search, and if anything becomes of that, or we hear of any press conference, we'll bring you that live as well.
Within the chain of command that you referred to, Senator, to urge that we be as forthcoming as we legally and appropriately can be with all the right members of the Senate and the House.
This is obviously a very politicized time in American life and a politicized time in the Congress, but I'm filling in right now for a chairman, Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who has lots of bipartisan respect around this place, because people know that when he does oversight, he's doing it as an Article I branch of Article II of the Constitution. He's not doing it as a Republican of an administration that he's either is or isn't aligned with his own party affiliation. This is a constitutional separation of powers issue, and so I think I can probably say on behalf of the chairman that there's a lot of robust support around here for you making sure that you recognize that this is a committee that would like to hear those details when you are ever pushed to politicize. Your predecessor, assuming your confirmation, famously referred to WikiLeaks as intelligence porn as opposed to journalism. And he said that the bedrock of our democracy requires public trust, and that WikiLeaks is regularly acting on behalf of other governments against the interests of the U.S. public. Can you briefly explain for this committee and the American people how you believe that WikiLeaks came to be an outlet of foreign and specifically Russian propaganda?
Senator, I don't have access to that information, so I don't know how that came to occur. I certainly share former Director Comey's concern about that. And I have no reason to doubt his description, but that's something that I would have to learn more about once I had access, once again, to classified information. But WikiLeaks was not a thing when I was in government before. So my observations of it have been solely through, like any American, watching the news media and bits and pieces.
I recognize that you've been in the private sector, so you're not up to speed on all of these issues yet, but is it your sense as you're arriving to lead a critical agency that is a part of the intelligence community? It's a broadly law enforcement agency, but obviously has the National Security Division, and you have lots of other IC relationships. Is it your view that we are currently adequately investing in the cyber challenges of our time?
Well, Senator, I don't think I know enough to be able to make a really responsible evaluation of the resources. What I can tell you is that my sense is that as much as everybody is talking about the threats of the sort that you're describing, I have the sense that we are just scratching the surface of how grave the threats really are, or at least how grave the threats are about to be before we blink and wake up. That's really based on just what limited information I've conversations I've had with people. But my sense is that one of the biggest changes I've seen from being in law enforcement for a number of years and then being out and now starting to get reintroduced again is, whereas cyber was a sort of discrete topic back in, say, 2005 that had a lot of attention, now in 2017, cyber in many ways permeates every aspect of national security, of the intelligence community, of every type of criminal conduct we deal with. It's become part of the fabric, both of our security, but also of the threats to our security. And it's hard for me to imagine that we're doing nearly enough. I think we can always do better.
When you are in the SCIF, when you're in a classified bunker getting briefings on these topics, I'm one of 5 people in the U.S. Senate who's never been a politician before. So I've been here for about 30 months. And in my time interviewing people, it is fairly stunning how when you ask direct questions about not just our cyber operations and our implementation, but cyber doctrine, offensive and defensive doctrine, when you ask who's responsible for cyber doctrine inside the executive branch, in the last administration and in the current administration, the main thing that happens is people start looking sideways and trying to figure out who else they can point to. How do you conceive of the FBI's responsibilities in the larger institutional framework of cyber responsibilities across the U.S. government? What is the FBI's role?
Well, I think the FBI probably has multiple roles. It has a criminal investigative role when there are ways in which the criminal investigative tools can be used to prevent, detect, disrupt threats. But then it also has an intelligence role where it partners with our partners in the intelligence community and our overseas partners in trying to defend our systems and our infrastructure from attacks, which is a slightly different kind of role. And the two things work hand in hand. And I would think that there's an analogy that could be drawn to the terrorism arena in terms of awareness. I remember listening to a prominent counterterrorism expert in a room full of prosecutors from all around the world. And it was a very jovial meeting until this guy got up and spoke. And he said, there are 2 types of countries. There are those who've been hit by a terrorist attack and get it. And there are those who have not yet. And then you could have heard a pin drop because it certainly cut a lot of the joy out of the room. And I think there is a degree to which the cyber threats that we face, the same kind of statement could be made there. My strong suspicion is that there are countries that have been hit and have started to wake up. There are companies that have been hit and have started to wake up. And then there are many who haven't realized it yet. Keyword being yet, because it's coming.
Assuming that you're confirmed, can you tell us a little bit about your first 90 days or first 100-day plan for how you will assess issues like our cyber capabilities and our cyber threats, and obviously in the counterterrorism space, a place that you've worked a lot more, trying to get back up to speed with where we may be underinvesting and how you risk rank and prioritize among those? What's your arrival plan?
Well, I think one of the first things I need to do is sit down with the senior management of the Bureau and start getting briefed up on all of the areas that the FBI is responsible for. I would be largely following off of the priorities that the FBI has in its strategy, which prioritizes counterterrorism, counterespionage, and cyber at the top. But since my guess is I'm probably furthest behind in some ways just because of the advance in technology on the cyber front, I would want to prioritize, in particular, spending more time on some of those issues early on, just because my own learning curve, as is true of anybody who's been out of that part of it, with the breakneck pace and advance in technology, would be impacted. So those would be some of the things I would prioritize early on.
Thank you. I have a number of cyber questions that you and I started discussing in my office that I look forward to following up with you on and trying to support you on when you have this important new calling. I'm going to turn the gavel back to the chairman, but if Senator Flake is ready to go, we will turn the questioning over to him. Thank you, Mr. Wray.
Thank you for being here, and thanks for the visit to my office as well. Enjoyed the discussion. And just following up on some of that, I know these questions have been asked a lot of times already, but the obligatory, do you feel that you can exhibit independence there as director of the FBI that's necessary for that position?
Senator, I am my own man, and I intend to be governed by the Constitution, by the laws, and by the rules, and to do things by the book, strictly independently, without fear or favor, and certainly without regard to partisan politics. That's the only way I think you can do this job.
Thank you. We discussed in my office some of the challenges coming up for the FBI. You mentioned technology and cyber, obviously, but with regard to technology, it seems that in this committee, we try to balance, obviously, security and privacy. As soon as we arrive at a solution, technology changes, and we're at square one once again. Can you talk about that process with the FBI and how you can work with this committee and the Congress to ensure that we have the proper balance between privacy and security?
Well, certainly, as you say, Senator, there needs to be a balance. And that's not just a privacy interest, but a protection of infrastructure. But I do believe very strongly that technology, the private sector, is advancing at such a rapid pace, and government historically, federal government, state and local government, foreign governments, are historically not as nimble in change. And somehow we as a country have to figure out a way to get to be one step ahead of the bad guys and those who would do us harm, and the way they would use technology against us, as opposed to constantly chasing the last technological advance. And so I think it's got to be a high priority to work both with the Congress, but also to reach out to industry and see if we can secure better cooperation in that effort.
Right. Thank you. Turning to an issue that's important to Arizona as a border state, eliminating public corruption on the southern border has traditionally been a priority for the FBI. And in the past, the Bureau has investigated public corruption and identified key trends in the type and frequency of these activities. Do you agree that this remains an issue, especially for border states like Arizona?
Well, Senator, I strongly agree that public corruption is an important priority for the FBI all throughout the country. My experience with public corruption investigations goes all the way back to my time as a law prosecutor, and some of the most meaningful cases that I worked on were public corruption cases. And then as Assistant Attorney General, of course, the Public Integrity section reported up to me, and that section played an incredibly important role. As to the FBI, my experience historically has been that some of the very, very best agents in the FBI gravitate to the public corruption squads, and that's because the skill level and sophistication of the very best FBI agents is, in my view, without parallel. And public corruption cases are extremely difficult to pursue, and it requires some of the best and brightest agents, and it's watching a good public corruption FBI agent work a public corruption case is really a sight to behold, and it would inspire any American as it did me when I saw it.
All right, thank you. As you may or may not know, all applicants for law enforcement positions at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, are congressionally mandated to pass a polygraph test as a condition of employment. The problem that we're having is that CBP experiences significantly higher failure rates, around 65%, than any other federal law enforcement agency. These high failure rates have prevented CBP from hiring enough officers to adequately staff our ports of entry, for example. And I think it's problematic for CBP to be turning away qualified applicants with distinguished military and law enforcement service records just because of a potentially flawed polygraph. What we're finding is a lot of people are reluctant to submit themselves because they've heard of false positives out there and fear that it might impact their ability to land another federal or state or local law enforcement job in the future. Given FBI's success administering its own polygraph, and I've asked this of Mr. Comey as well, will you commit to provide guidance or share best practices with CBP and DHS to better conduct their polygraph examination?
Well, Senator, that's not an issue that I'm especially familiar with at this stage, but something I would look forward to learning more about and seeing how we at the Bureau could be helpful to CBP in that regard.
That would be helpful. FBI, we understand, has a much better program there, and it is a significant problem on our border to hire just to deal with attrition, let alone hire the number of officers as Border Patrol agents or port officials that we need. Now, over the past few years, we've witnessed several high-profile data breaches at federal government agencies, including OMB. Data breaches are often caused by a technological vulnerability or human vulnerability, or both. I asked your predecessor about this, but I want to hear your thoughts as well. Given the amount of sensitive data held by the FBI and DOJ generally, what steps will you take at the Bureau to ensure that its data is secure, both from technological weaknesses and by human hackers?
Well, Senator, at the moment, I don't know much about the FBI's security status in terms of its cybersecurity, but that's something I would need to focus on early on. I'd want to get briefed by the right experts to understand not only what we've done, but what they see as the threats, and how they can be confident that they've correctly identified the threats. What kind of pressure testing and reality checking they've done to make sure that our systems aren't more vulnerable than they might appreciate.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hirono.
Yeah, I'd like to defer to my colleague, Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thanks to Senator Hirono for permitting me to go first. Good afternoon, Mr. Wray. Thank you for your willingness to serve and your families. I want to ask you a couple of questions and hope that you can give me answers that are as straightforward as you can, given the limitations of your position. In your view, is obstruction of justice a serious crime?
Absolutely.
Is your view that lying to the FBI is a serious crime?
Absolutely.
And both should be investigated vigorously if there's evidence that they occurred?
Yes.
To your knowledge, is there evidence that there has been perjury or obstruction of justice in connection with the investigation into Russian interference in our elections 2016?
I don't have knowledge to that effect, Senator, but I think Special Counsel Mueller would have jurisdiction over that.
And the reason that he's investigating is because there is sufficient evidence to warrant a special counsel, as I advocated at the very beginning of Rod Rosenstein's appointment, and ultimately he agreed to do. So I view this investigation with the utmost seriousness because it does involve obstruction of justice and perjury and potential defrauding the government of its lawful services, conspiracy to violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and other violations of law. And you and I have talked about the need for the FBI to be as independent and immune from political interference as possible, because I foresee a firestorm brewing that will threaten the FBI. And I'm going to support you because I do believe that you will provide the kind of independence and integrity that the FBI needs based on your record and your experience and expertise. And I am trusting, as I think members of this body will trust you, to take that most solemn and historically significant obligation as seriously as you do the crimes of perjury and obstruction of justice. Those kinds of crimes betray the rule of law because they impede vigorous and independent investigation. And we will be counting on you to protect the FBI, which is an institution of such professional excellence and integrity that it is worth any person's career to defend. I hope you agree.
I do agree, Senator.
If you foresee a threat to that independence and integrity that rises to the level of political interference, will you commit to taking appropriate action, which may include resigning from office?
Yes, Senator. As we discussed when we met, one of the lessons I got from both former Attorney General Griffin Bell and former Deputy Attorney General Larry Thompson is that you cannot take on a position like this without resolving in advance that you have to be willing to quit or be fired at a moment's notice in order to stand up for what you think is right. And that would be my commitment to stand firm to that maxim.
And you also told me that you try to persuade whoever might be taking an inappropriate or illegal action, whether it's the President of the United States or anyone else, endeavor to persuade that official to change course, correct?
That's correct, Senator. My whole career, both public and private, has consisted of an awful lot of times telling people things they don't want to hear and talking people out of bad ideas.
In my view, the firing of your predecessor warrants investigation as a potential obstruction of justice. We have not yet proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We have nothing like it, and we're short of evidence necessary to charge anyone.
Hey guys, we're going to switch gears for a second and talk still about this missing persons case, the four men who went missing in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is still an ongoing situation, an ongoing case. You can see there in the picture, those are the four people: Mark Sturgis, Tom Mayo, Don Finicchiaro, and Jimmy Tarpatrick. They all remain missing as authorities continue to search all over Bucks County for them. Now, earlier we had some aerial footage of that chopper over this wide search in what the reports are saying is as a piece of land, 90-acre farm, just about 30 miles above Philadelphia. So they're continuing to search for these boys, again, ages 18 through 22. And it's really kind of a crazy case. It's still ongoing. The DA revealed a little bit more this morning about what is going on and saying that they're getting closer and closer to finding evidence. No human remains have been found. These are still the men that they're looking for. And they're trying to connect this person, Cosmo DeMarco, age 20, with these boys. And what were we reading, Ben? That there is some sort of connection? We just don't, they haven't been able to reveal it exact yet, but they...
Well, I believe that they must be pretty close to each other, just based off of their age range. Like, they seem like they were actually friends or something like that. And, you know, I don't know about this Cosmo guy, but he apparently, it's reports saying that he had a bad side, that, he had, possession of, like, handguns and shotguns and all types of, dangerous weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So, that right there alone, is kind of like pinpointing him as a target. And, it's also making him, the suspect of, for the missing people.
Yeah, it's really a tough case. And DA was saying this morning, just the magnitude of this case, how much they have to search, not to mention the extreme heat. I mean, we're feeling the heat down here in D.C., but they're they're physically raking through this property, that many, many square miles of footage of rocks and forest and farmland. and the stakes are incredibly high. They're looking for these 4 men that you see pictured here, and still no evidence to be found of their bodies, of where they might be. I believe that they did find a car of one of the guys, Mark Sturgis, who I think is on the left there, the bigger picture. They found it in a shopping mall area, so the search still continues. So they know, they're finding more evidence. They're slow to find it, but again, we were saying the person of interest was Cosmo DiNardo, age 20, whose father posted bail for him on Tuesday evening after his arrest on unrelated charges. So he was charged with firearm possession. And like I said, his father posted bail. He got out on that, and now they're trying to link it back and try to see, hey, is this guy really connected to these 4 men? But now he's released. So it's really still all in question. I believe the DA there, Weintraub, will possibly update again, maybe in the afternoon, on this case. But we haven't heard from him since this morning, with just those updates that we've been relaying to you, that they're getting closer to finding some evidence, but still have not been able to put that together to find what's happening with these 4 men who are missing. So quite the scary case there.
Yeah, it's a huge mystery.
It's still a really big mystery. Speaking of kind of high stakes things right now, we're getting some footage in right now in a breaking situation in Washington State University. This is over in the eastern part of Washington State, where apparently the college there, the university, is on lockdown. We're going to find out some more information for you guys and just go over to this footage right now.
Get him briefed up. We're going to ask him to come over and give you guys the information. Okay? But he's only right across campus. It shouldn't be long. He'll be here.
No lockdown in effect?
Not right now. We just heard that they lifted the lockdown. So let me give that information to Kyle and the rest of the stuff so he can get caught up. And as soon as he's ready to roll, I'll send him over to you. Okay? All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, we're actually reading. This is not Washington State University. It is the Capitol campus. So Washington State Capitol in Olympia, Washington. And we're looking now at what looks like some officials and some people questioning them about what's going on. Apparently, there were reports of possibly an active shooter, and police have responded to this. Looks like they're kind of hanging out with less of a sense of urgency than I would expect, though. So there's no real word on sort of the update now or if there are any injuries, but it looks like they're focused here on the Natural Resource and Office Building at the state capitol in Washington State in Olympia. Reports of possibly an active shooter, the public being advised to stay away from this Capitol campus, so the Capitol grounds there in Washington. So we're going to kind of keep looking for information about this and bring that to you when we have it.
I have to go over to the TVW building. Yeah, and we're on the other side right now to get to that, so. Yeah, but I mean, how long do you guys, well, you guys tell us how long you want to run it, but I mean, the lockdown's lifted, so I don't know. I just got that right from the State Patrol. 4 shots, take together.
No competition. 2 shots.
Looks like they got the guy.
Was there a guy?
Oh, yeah.
Was he the rest of them?
Either caught him or killed himself.
Was it
because they wouldn't look
transformer?
along.
The blue? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you're looking at this footage of Washington State in the capital of Olympia, Washington, where there was a reported lockdown for a reported active shooter. Now, we're not confirmed on this yet, but we're hearing word that possibly that lockdown has been lifted. As you can see, there's less of a sense of urgency of police activity running around here, but we are told hopefully we'll be getting a briefing from officials in just a moment here. But you can see the camera kind of moving around there at the state capitol, the Capitol campus. A police spokesman had said previously that there were reports of an active shooter. We'll find out more details on that when they speak again. But you can see here, it looks like things are calming down, and hopefully that lockdown has been lifted and things are all right. Earlier, the public was being advised to stay away from that Capitol campus there in Olympia for safety, as that area, which focused on the natural resources and office building, was under a lockdown. And they were sort of securing the perimeter, asking people not to come in and out, telling people to remain in their buildings and whatnot. So I believe, hopefully, the situation is under control, but that's what we were seeing here. It looks like we just lost our shots. I know, so we'll take it back in here, but we'll be waiting and watching for an update from police there with that activity. But let's go back now to the National Tenant March, the housing march that we've been seeing here in DC. One of our photogs is there getting that footage. So let's check back in there. Some of the low-income residents and people from across the nation that care about housing and want to protest President Trump's proposal to cut the budget for low-income housing are out there in a march. So let's take a look at that protest now. Okay, guys, looks like we're seeing a little more activity now on this shot in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. That is still a picture way back across, over back to Washington State. And we're hearing a little bit of natural sound there. We're waiting on officials to give an update on what we're hearing is possibly this lockdown that has been lifted. We have not confirmed that yet, but waiting and watching for that to be confirmed. And Ben, you're kind of watching the tweets on that. Nothing really to confirm yet, but you can see here officers sort of not rushing around. Nothing's too frantic, so we believe things are going to be under control shortly.
Yeah, you see the cameraman, he's walking away.
Yeah.
Unless they're going for like a press.
Yeah, exactly. It's possible they're kind of gearing up for a small news conference here on this breaking situation. But all we know, guys, if you're just joining us on the show, is that the activity was focused around the natural resources and office building, which is part of the state capitol there on the Capitol campus, on the Capitol grounds in Olympia, Washington. There were reports of an active shooter. A police spokesman said that earlier on, and the public was advised to stay away. Others said that they don't know what really prompted the police response this morning. So again, this is over on the Pacific Coast. They're 3 hours earlier than us. So this is still the morning over there, Washington State time, and a campus-wide Capitol campus lockdown was instated, is what we are hearing. Now we have yet to kind of hear what's next and what they've found. If there are any updates on that lockdown being lifted, we're going to wait and watch for some updates from State Patrol there in Washington. Like we said, it looks like it's not too frantic right now, and that's really all we know right now, is that a shooter was reported, and we'll kind of watch and wait to see what becomes of this.
Yeah, it says maybe a briefing. brief media at 10:45.
Okay, great. All right, great.
Or
So we'll wait on this possibly in about 10 minutes for a briefing, and we'll watch for that. Let's take you back over to D.C. The Tenant March still going on in protest here of President Trump's proposal to cut the budget with regards to housing and urban development. So you're going to see some residents, low-income residents, and advocates and other leaders from really across the country gathering together in this march here. We have our camera guy, Doug, is there on scene. This is in D.C. You're looking at this Tenant March rally over on Capitol Hill. They started at the Church of the Reformation on Capitol Hill and geared up to rally. We'll see how big this grows to, because it looks like a pretty good crowd in the heat. Yeah. Hot day here in D.C.
Seen a dude holding a pack of water.
I know. Oh, yeah, it's hot out. It's hot out there. We're just making, any efforts outside today hard, including that search for the missing men in Pennsylvania, including anything like this protest. But we're reading, they do have a schedule today for what they'll do. They kicked it off at a church. They'll be rallying, delivering letters, demanding a meeting with Ben Carson from Housing and Urban Development, of course, and really just rallying against what they want to speak out against, walking around in their rally, in their march here. So we'll see if we can get some good footage of this march from our photojournalist, Doug Wilkes, who's out there in the heat here in Capitol Hill. Let's see how long we have this. Not too much longer. All right, guys, we'll take you back to Washington State. We're still watching here where this lockdown is apparently in going on right now, concurrent to this march. So, yeah, we'll just kind of see if we get some updates from officials, and we'll have more to report. Yeah, more to report to you guys shortly when we hear more about this.
Glad you found nothing.
Yes.
Us too. Nothing else. It was good training.
So we're hearing from some hot mics here. The police members there, the officers kind of joking around and saying, if nothing else, it was good training. So possibly this was all dissolved quickly, and it was actually not a threat. So we're going to tell you guys that now. We don't know, but it looks like they're in jovial spirits here and putting things away. So hopefully there'll be an update soon on what was, we thought, reports of possibly an active shooter in the Capitol campus there. So hopefully an update from Olympia Police or state police there shortly. We'll see what happens. All right, guys, we are hearing that State Patrol will be briefing the media on what sparked this lockdown coming up shortly in just a couple minutes. So we're going to wait and watch for that just to get a quick all clear. But we are reading, the reports are saying that a lockdown has been lifted here at the state capitol in Olympia, Washington. You can see some onlookers there. I wonder what the case was, if it was just sort of all a mistake or a prank. We don't really know. But like we heard some of the officers say off the record, they were just saying, you know, maybe this was at least it was practice. So hopefully all is fine. As we are hearing, things have been lifted. We'll get an update from police, State Patrol, who are to brief the media in just a couple minutes here. It looks like they are probably gearing up for that, setting up on that. No word of injuries. We're not seeing any reports of any injuries in this scenario this morning. But remember, it's earlier there. Oh, here we go. Here's our briefing.
A large response, but we aren't able to really understand exactly what that person heard or saw.
But that person was an employee. Are you guys certain of that? Or
We're not certain they were leaving the building saying that, so we're not 100% certain they were an employee. The person that did call 911 was an employee.
Kyle, you just got here. Can you kind of give me an overview?
Yeah, so right now we're advising the campus is going out of lockdown. All buildings will be reopened. We have been telling employees since about 9:30 this morning to remain in shelter in place, remain in their buildings. If employees were outside of their buildings, they weren't allowed to have access back into the buildings. So you probably saw a large contingent of employees who had to milling about. And that lockdown protocol is to protect the employees inside and also protect employees outside to have them leave the area. We wanted to make sure that no people were leaving or entering, so if there was a potential active shooter or gunman, that we were able to locate that individual.
And no evidence of any shots fired?
No evidence of shots fired. So this individual, what had happened was a person had left the OB2 building and reported suspicious noises that they thought were gunfire to an employee. An employee overheard that. That employee called 911, which led to the large police response. We never had confirmation that any type of shooting occurred or what caused those noises, but as an abundance of precaution, we investigated it. We searched both the OB2 and the Natural Resources building and the parking garages as well, because they share a parking garage. We weren't able to locate any evidence of gunfire, any evidence of a gunman, any evidence of anyone being shot.
Any evidence of something that would sound like gunfire, whether it was something that was backfiring?
Nothing at this point. And you know, part of the challenge for us has been not having that original reporting party to tell us exactly what they heard, where they heard it, and that would really help us try to locate, focus our efforts in that location.
Anything else going to be happening the rest of the day with this?
So we are bringing in our bomb squad as a precaution to search both buildings, both Natural Resources and the OB2 building. You're going to still see a large presence of state troopers on campus today, and that's going to be just as abundance of caution. We will continue to search that area, even though we haven't located anything.
But no thoughts of sending employees home at this point?
You know, that would be up to the individual agencies. The message that's coming from Department of Enterprise Services is the lockdown is over, and we're telling employees if they see anything suspicious to please report it to 911.
You're going to search with bomb squad?
Yes.
And it's both buildings, DNR and OB2?
Yes.
Just OB2?
Both buildings.
Could you describe the terrain, the size of the building, the scale of the effort?
You know, I don't know how large those buildings are. From my understanding, there were some of the largest buildings on campus, and that's what took the time for us to search them thoroughly. We had to search every office, every hallway, every bathroom. We wanted to make sure that there was no evidence of someone inside that building, whether it be a gunman or a victim, and we wanted to get to those people as quickly as possible. That's why we had all the employees stay in place, stay in their offices, and now those employees will be allowed outside.
Can you take me back through it? It's 10:45 now. Sorry.
Yeah. So at 9:14 is when we got the initial call. There was an individual who was leaving the OB2 building, had reported, said that they thought they heard suspicious noises that they thought possibly could be gunfire. An employee overheard that, called 911. We haven't been able to locate that original reporting party, but based on that information, Department of Enterprise Services put the entire campus on lockdown. We brought in State Patrol and also Olympia Police responded, and we searched both the Natural Resource Building and the OB2 building and the parking garage and did not find any evidence of any gunfire, of any gunman, or any victim as well.
Is this heightened sense of security because of what's going on in the nation, do you think?
Well, I think over the last few months, we've kind of updated our protocols to be more prepared in case something happens. Last year here on campus, both the State Patrol and DS worked on an active shooter situation where we did a drill, an all-day drill with SWAT teams, with multiple local police and fire agencies to see if we actually had an active shooter on campus, how would we respond, how would we work together, how would we protect employees and the public. And so this is constantly a developing situation for us. We want to continue to practice and refine our protocols to protect both employees and the public.
But is there a little bit of heightened concern right now on your part? I mean, just you personally and the others here because of what's happening in D.C. and all?
Well, no, I mean, I think over the last couple months, we've had that one individual that I believe it was like a month or two ago who was coming to the Capitol campus. With that, we really work closely with DS to help with our down procedures so how do we notify employees, keep them safe, and alert them what they need to do, give them actionable information. If we had an active shooter on campus, that individual, of course, was caught on the edge of campus by our troopers. But, I think in today's day and age, we need to have a heightened sense of awareness. And really, the employees are our most important asset because they see what's going on campus maybe before we would see it. And we want to hear from them and take action as soon as possible.
And they're instructed on what to do. They know where the safe places are. There are safe places for them.
Well, they're told to stay away from windows, stay away from doors. I don't know how each office is configured, but what I do know is, at least in the general administration building, we're all in secured, locked offices. And so when we have a lockdown procedure, we stay away from those doors. Don't let people in and out of our secure areas. Each office obviously has their own protocols, but that's something that they would work together on in their own offices and their own agencies.
And just so we have your name again, Kyle.
Oh yeah, Kyle Moore. So it's KYLE MOORE, spokesman for the Washington State Patrol.
And you say there are bomb techs are going to go through?
Yep. So we're bringing the bomb dogs, and so you'll be seeing that probably in the next 15 to 20 minutes.
And that's just for what reason?
Just as a precaution. We want we did not find anything, but we have that resource, and we want to make sure that there's nothing inside the building that would cause any problems for the public or the.
Just DNR.
DNR and OB2.
OB2, DSH. That's what I was.
So the buildings are connected by the parking garage. What you see here is OB2, and then Natural Resources is kind of the side building. So those are the two buildings. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, guys. So there was our update there from State Patrol to the media there at Olympia, Washington, at the state capitol. And like we said, thank goodness there was no sense of urgency. We were correct. The lockdown was reported as lifted, and lots of good questions there for what happens next. Apparently, someone heard something that sounded like a gunshot, said it, and someone else called 911, and it spiraled into this thing. They had a big police response, as they should, as they are taking every precaution, because we do know we live in that day and age now. We always know police are going to respond fully to these type of things. We were talking about 4th of July having just happened. We're hearing poppers and firecrackers all over the place. You never know what's what. And so it's apparently things sort of got passed through the message line, like telephone, and they responded. And so now taking even every other precaution to even bring a bomb squad in, he was saying. So they're going to make sure they nail this down, make sure there's no threat, and then go from there.
Yeah, I just think what they're doing is fantastic because, here where we live, if we get a call like that and, they see that no one got injured, there was, no evidence found of any type of gunshot or bullets or anything like that, they wouldn't go back and check behind themselves. So it's actually good that they're doing that to make sure that campus stays safe.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And just to update you,
What did you see out the windows?
I seen a lot of police, a lot of AR-15s.
Looks like there's a little bit of a witness statement here, so listen in.
So we shut our blinds as we were directed and got away from the windows and waited for further directions.
How long were you in?
I'm thinking probably about 45 minutes. Seemed like pretty much.
How's the mood?
It was guarded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People taking it in stride, or?
Yeah. Trying to remain safe. Trying to keep things within the protocol.
Yeah. What does it make you think that they didn't catch the guy?
Well, I don't know. You just wonder, exactly what happened. I really don't know all the details. If there actually was an assailant, or if it was, I don't know. I don't know. But anytime they don't catch somebody, it leaves you wondering.
Does it make you feel a little less safe knowing he got away?
It does leave a little bit of a questionable amount of safety, So.
Huge response?
Could you clarify that? Huge response of what?
And officers and big guns. And...
Oh yeah, there was a lot. They were here quick, man. They were on it. They were on the scene very quick and enforced very rapidly. So.
Satisfied with that response?
Yeah. I think they did a great job.
What's your name?
Robert Matthews.
Go ahead and spell it for me.
Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, Matthews, M-A-T-H-E-W-S.
You work in the building here?
Yes, I do.
Department of Licensing?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
So there, guys, a witness account of sort of what the mood is now over there at the State Capitol building. And interestingly, the patrol spokesman, Kyle Moore, was saying that it was really unclear what prompted the initial report. So someone heard something, someone else reported it, and then they're still under investigation. It's unclear what it was. So this guy, according to him, he's feeling maybe there really is someone out there. There was something to do with the shooter, or maybe it's not plausible. Maybe it was some other noise that people were hearing, but it's a little bit of a state of confusion there. But the police have given the all clear. They're bringing in the bomb squad to make sure all is well over there in Olympia, the state capital of Washington. People were ordered to be on lockdown. They were in their offices, staying there. This guy was saying something about pulling the blinds and looking outside, and the mood was a little bit guarded, as he used that word. People were being advised to stay off that campus, the campus being the Capitol grounds there in Olympia, Washington. But guys, if you're watching with us, if you have any thoughts or comments, let us know what you think. Any questions, we're here to answer them for you as we kind of continue to follow any of the live and breaking news reports from across the nation, across the world today on this Wednesday, July 12th. Not sure if we'll get much more out of this, but I'm continuing to read some of the updates on just sort of what happened here, and if we get any other confirmations or more pieces to the investigation, we'll bring that to you guys as well. So let's take it back in here, guys. If you are enjoying our channel, don't forget to click the button that says subscribe so you can see that when we go up every day, weekdays at 11 a.m., you can catch us here live on Fox 5 Live, coming out of the Washington, D.C. digital newsroom. Molly, intern Ben, hanging out in the studio. Ben is back. He's a great helper. I love having him in here. And we're just going to keep a watch on what's going on, guys. We're still over in Capitol Hill as well, where Christopher Wray has been testifying to the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's the person that President Trump has picked to fill the shoes of James Comey going forward, getting a bunch of questions about Russia, President Trump himself, and other things related to the FBI. So that's been going on all day. He is at the podium there, under the mic, speaking. So we'll jump it over there for a little bit more and keep a watch to see if we have any breaking information out of this situation in Olympia, Washington. So for now, you're watching Fox 5 Live, guys. Let's go back over to Capitol Hill and check it out, this hearing with the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Foundational, religious freedom, not racial profiling. Are those areas that, as FBI director, you would be particularly sensitive about moving forward on any kind of programs that would treat different groups, particularly minority groups, in any kind of a discriminatory way?
Well, Senator, needless to say, discrimination is abhorrent and not something that I would condone. I would want to pay particularly close attention to any program that seemed to raise those kinds of concerns. And as I mentioned, on the issue of religious freedom, which is something that's always been very important to me, and one of the, as I said, one of the cases that was one of the more meaningful cases I ever did as a line prosecutor was a case where churches all around the country were being burned down precisely because of hostility to a particular religion, which is obviously unacceptable.
Hate to interrupt, but I seem to be over my time. I know that if you don't mind, Madam Chair, your firm has represented various individuals who have interest to the Russian energy interests, et cetera, and so I will submit a question as to whether any investigations that would involve clients of what would probably be your former law firm, should you take this position, how you would handle any conflict issues regarding those kinds of circumstances. And then I'll also submit some questions relating to hate crimes, because as we mentioned in my meeting with you, that there is a rise in hate crimes and what the FBI can do and should do to counter and prevent hate crimes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wray, Senator Durbin is going to join us, so now you and I are going to be engaged in a little filibuster. I have, and he's here. I have some follow-up questions. While he's sitting down, I did want to, this question I asked you really quickly about the shell companies and the use of shell companies. I just want to explain it, and you answered it fine, but it's a very big deal to me because the Treasury Department has noted a significant rise in the use of shell companies in real estate transactions because foreign buyers use them as a way to hide their identity and safely conceal money in the U.S. It could be from any country. I used it in the context of Russia. I raised this with Director Comey when he testified last time, and just about and your experience with white-collar cases. Does the anonymity associated with the use of shell companies to buy real estate hurt the FBI's ability to trace the flow of illicit money and fight organized crime?
Certainly, Senator, those kinds of maneuvers, the creation of shell companies and things like that, are unfortunately an all too common way that criminals and others try to circumvent detection. And so certainly I would think that the FBI needs to work with its partners in law enforcement, especially the Treasury Department, to, as I said, follow the money. And sometimes that's easier said than done, but I think that's a critical step to trying to prevent and disrupt and not just detect after the fact criminal conduct.
Thank you very much. Senator Durbin.
Thank you. I know this has been a long ordeal for you, but I think it's coming to an end. Let me just try to ask 2 or 3 questions and to nail down this torture memo issue. I want to follow up on what you said earlier about your role in approval of interrogation techniques, which we also discussed in my office. You said that during your time in the Deputy Attorney General's office, you don't recall reviewing or commenting on any memo written by John Yoo. You also said that as Assistant Attorney General of the Criminal Division, you, quote, provided general information and legal support, close quote, regarding the legal standards for interrogation. I want to ask you about one specific memo, and I'm going to send it down to you if you haven't had a chance to see it, because I want you to. It was written by Daniel Levin, and it was dated December 2004. This memo replaced the August 2002 Bybee memo, and it says that the Criminal Division reviewed and approved it. It specifically says it. The Criminal Division of the Department of Justice has reviewed this memorandum and concurs in the analysis set forth below. Here's the key point. In a footnote on the memo indicates that under the new analysis, all of the torture techniques that were approved under the Bybee memo, like waterboarding, would still be legal under the new memo. In other words, nothing changed. And it says that expressly had the approval of your division. Do you recall reviewing and approving that memo?
I do not recall reviewing and approving that memo, but what I do recall is that we we drew a line about what the Criminal Division's appropriate role was, that the Criminal Division should be consulted on the general meaning of the statute, what the elements are, how you define what the elements are. What I did not think was the appropriate role for the Criminal Division, and so we did not review and approve or bless, is review of particular interrogation techniques. And that was because even at the time, I believe, we were already starting to investigate, and in one case, which led ultimately to prosecution, cases where techniques went too far. And I did not think it was appropriate for the Criminal Division to be setting interrogation policy or providing legal advice on a going forward basis.
The memo does not make that distinction. It simply says, the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice has reviewed this memo and concurs in the analysis set forth below, which goes into detail in terms of techniques, interrogation techniques, in the footnotes. Well, I want to give this to you because I want you to take a look at it. I'm not trying to stump you here. Take a look at it and see if you can put it in context for me. Tell me if I'm missing something about this. But it appears that this did go through your division, and I want to hear, after you've had a chance to look at it, if you wouldn't mind, if you would respond and let me know that.
Okay.
Is that fair? Two other things. You worked with U.S. Attorney Chris Christie?
When I was Assistant Attorney General, yes, he was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey.
And you were part of the Bristol-Myers Squibb settlement, involved in it?
That I don't think so. I was aware of the Bristol-Myers investigation. I think it's possible that the settlement may have occurred after I had left the criminal division.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. The last point I want to ask you about relates to the obstruction of justice, which I think you've, in a 2004 speech about prosecuting corporate fraud, you urged severe penalties for obstruction of justice, and you said, quote, lying to government investigators, obstructing our investigation needs to be seen as one of the surest paths to severe consequences, end of quote. Do you believe that obstruction of justice by government officials should be treated similarly?
I think obstruction of justice, whether it's committed by a senior corporate executive or a guy in the mailroom or a government official, needs to be treated very seriously.
In the early Enron cases that you were involved in, they are exceptional in that people went to jail. Executives went to jail. And then we kind of, some reason or another, the Department of Justice lost its stomach for that and stopped sending people to jail. To me, that is a category of injustice, which I hope we will rectify. I don't have great hope, but I hope we will rectify in the future if there's wrongdoing that harms so many people. Would you comment on that particular aspect of prosecution?
Happy to, Senator. I feel very strongly that when one is investigating companies, that we need to look at the people, the individuals in the company who may have engaged in wrongdoing, because companies act through people. And so I think one of the things that we did effectively with the Enron task force and in a number of other corporate fraud prosecutions during that era was show that we were willing to follow the facts and the law wherever they may lead, all the way to the very top of the house. And in the Enron case in particular, as you know, as you commented on, we brought cases against essentially the entire C-suite of the company. Obviously, we have to have the facts and the evidence and the law to support it. We can't succumb to mob rule or anything like that, but I think we need to be sure, and I think that is the way I view the FBI's mission, is to follow the facts and the law wherever they may lead, to whomever they may lead, even if people don't like it.
That's fair. Thanks for your patience today, and I'm going to send this memo down to you so you have a chance to take it with you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wray. I think you can finally get some lunch here. I wanted to thank you and to make sure you know that you have a lot of support here. I am going to be supporting you, as a number of my colleagues are. I think your answers earlier explaining your opposition to torture of any kind was very important when Senator Feinstein asked you those questions. I also think that the answers that you gave to many of the senators about the independence of the FBI was very compelling and heartfelt, and that meant a lot, because I don't have to tell you that you're coming in at a time that is unprecedented, where you've had the director of the FBI fired, the then acting attorney general a few months ago fired. And as someone that's been in law enforcement and believes that law enforcement has to have people that are in charge, that follow the law and care about the law and believe in our democracy more than anything, it couldn't be a more important time for you to be coming into this agency. And I think that you saw the bipartisan nature of the questions, and the respect here has a lot to do with how you've handled it and your experience today, but it also has a lot to do because the senators here know how important this job is right now. So I want to thank you for your time, and we are going to leave the record open until Friday if senators have further questions, and I'm pleased to say this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, good timing on that one there. That hearing adjourned. Now, on the Hill, Christopher Wray testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee today as possibly the next director of the FBI. So that's what we've been listening into today, guys. I'm here in studio with Ben, who's helping me out. Thanks for being here, Ben. We saw a lot of good stuff today. It was kind of a mix of politics at the beginning, moved into some more breaking news and some potential threats that are over in Washington State, which was all cleared. And then, of course, the search that continues for the missing men in Pennsylvania. Very, very interesting case there. I'm sure we're going to have to wait on that and hear more tonight.
Yeah, hopefully these people come up and hopefully nothing like bodily harm happened to them, and hopefully they find a suspect or find more evidence on what's going on, because, you know, this is a mystery.
It's truly a mystery, guys. And we're going to be following this, of course, as the news comes out, as it's trending. This very peculiar missing persons case in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But with that, guys, we are going to go into the end of our show here this afternoon. We are on every day at 11 a.m. into the afternoon, depending on breaking news. And we're here for your watching pleasure, so you can check in with us whenever you want to see whatever's breaking, some live events and news. We're going to keep you informed with all the social media attached to it, the tweets, the video, whatever we got going on, to keep you guys in the know of our live events. All right, guys, with that and with this lunch break here on the Hill, which was perfect timing for this little break, we are going to roll it out. But you can catch all the updates on our stories, on anything you've been following on our website, fox5dc.com, and also our Facebook page. We publish and post any breaking videos and written reports as well, web stories, for you guys to keep updated on everything. So we'll be updating that Pennsylvania missing men case in Bucks County. We'll be publishing and updating that for edits as it comes out, and everything else that is breaking news. So with that, Ben, all right, I guess we'll roll it out. Tomorrow's another day, so we'll see you guys Thursday. Check in with us at 11 a.m. We'll leave you with a beautiful shot of the Capitol Dome here, because we're in Washington, D.C. So saying goodbye on this hot, hot day here in Washington is hot and humid. Everybody. Yes, stay hydrated. And with that, it is going to be a hot one today. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 11. See you guys.